Chapter 841. Longao knew very well that Lu Yun wanted him to go to the life and death realm. If he didn't go, the Martial Artists Alliance would definitely deal with him. Without pressure, there would be no motivation. Without danger, there would be no growth. So, Longao had never been afraid of danger. No matter what, he had to improve his strength at the fastest speed, and the only way was to keep practicing. Because of this, Longao didn't refuse and said, "Okay, after 10 days, I will go to the life and death realm on behalf of the Martial Artists Alliance." "Black Wolf, you said before that you want to go further and climb higher." He nodded. Was he going to meet Yu Yin in Fire Beacon City? Without a doubt, Yu Yin must be in the headquarters of the Martial Artists Alliance. No matter what, Yu Yin's master, Hades, was a divine realm martial artist. It was easy to figure out what was going on. "Black Wolf, it's very simple. As long as you can find the legendary divine Dao inheritance in the life and death realm, I can guarantee that the higher-ups will summon you. The divine Dao inheritance in exchange for a chance." If it were other people, they would definitely not agree. After all, the divine Dao inheritance represented the peak of martial arts in this world. In the eyes of ordinary people, divine Dao martial artists were the real peak experts. But Longao wouldn't do that. For his beloved, let alone one divine Dao inheritance, even if there were more than 1,000 divine Dao inheritances, he would still give them up. "I understand." Lu Yun seemed to be very satisfied and said with a smile, "I have already contacted the Wanjian school. Since you want to challenge, I will fulfill your wish. But Black Wolf, I have to tell you in advance that you are only representing yourself. It has nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance. Do you understand?" Shameless. Longao cursed in his heart. How could he not know what Lu Yun meant? Understood. In that case, come with me. Lu Yun left the Martial Artists Alliance with Longao, Lu Fei, and the 4 enforcers, and headed to Wanjian School in a grandiose manner. No one knew who spread the news about the challenge, but the Wanjian School, which was usually quiet, was packed with people today. Wanjian School was one of the top 10 schools. As one of the top 10 superpowers in the Tianwu continent, Wanjian School might not be the strongest, but when it came to formations, Wanjian School was definitely the best. Even the Martial Artists Alliance, the Heaven and Earth sect, and the Long family couldn't compete with Wanjian School. Within Fire Beacon City, the branch of the Martial Artists Alliance, the branch of the Wanjian School, and the branch of the Sword sect jointly controlled Fire Beacon City. For countless years, the 3 branches had been living peacefully and didn't interfere with each other's business. Because of this, with the strength of Wanjian School, even the people from the Martial Artists Alliance and the Sword sect didn't dare to casually provoke Wanjian School, let alone ordinary people. Everyone started to guess who exactly Black Wolf was. As everyone knew, Black Wolf suddenly appeared and became the Vice Hall Chief of the Martial Artists Alliance for no reason. He even defeated Lu Fei from the Martial Artists Alliance. Although they admired this person, Hei Lang's sudden challenge to the 10,000 Formation sect made everyone look down on him. They even thought that he had lost his mind. In other words, everyone thought that Black Wolf was courting death by challenging Wanjian School. In Wanjian School, in addition to ordinary people, all the members of the Sword sect were present. Among them, the Sword sect master, Murong Guena, and the Sword sect master's daughter, Murong Yanga, were sitting at the head of the table. In addition to the Sword sect, there were also the Martial Artists Alliance and Wanjian School. Looking at Black Wolf, Dongfang Liang, the master of Wanjian School, felt extremely gloomy. Although he looked indifferent, anyone could guess that he must be very angry. Wanjian School's strength was obvious. No one dared to do this. A little Black Wolf dared to challenge Wanjian School in public. He didn't take Wanjian School seriously at all. "Brother Dongfang, this time Black Wolf challenged your Wanjian School. I wonder how you will deal with it." Dongfang Liang smiled and said, "Brother Murong, you must be joking. A little trash dares to challenge Wanjian School. He's really courting death." Dongfang Liang didn't take the Martial Artists Alliance seriously at all. After all, Black Wolf was the Deputy Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance. If Black Wolf challenged Wanjian School, Wouldn't it mean that the Martial Artists Alliance challenged Wanjian School? It would be strange if Wanjian School didn't give him any face. However, Lu Yun smiled and said, Brother Dongfang, although Black Wolf is the Deputy Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance, Black Wolf's challenge has nothing to do with us. As an array master, Black Wolf wants to see the array masters of Wanjian School. I can't do anything about it. Please forgive me. Brother Lu, you must be joking. Of course, Dongfang Liang didn't believe Lu Yun's words. Brother Lu, no matter what, Black Wolf is the Deputy Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance. Now I just want to ask you, what if there's an accident in the challenge later? Dongfang Liang didn't finish his words, but the meaning in his words was very clear. Lu Yun was not a fool. Of course, he knew what Dongfang Liang meant. He smiled and said, Brother Dongfang, I've said that Black Wolf's challenge is his own business. It has nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance. So, no matter what happens later, it has nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance. Okay. Longao looked at all the people around and didn't move at all. His courage alone was admired by many people. You're Black Wolf? Who are you? Dongfang Shaw snorted. His face was full of disdain and contempt. He said, Black Wolf, don't think that you can challenge the Wanjian School just because you know a little about formations. You talk too much nonsense. Longao shook his head helplessly and ignored Dongfang Shaw. Instead, he said to Dongfang Liang, Master Dongfang, I, Black Wolf, officially challenge you. Anyone can fight. What an arrogant tone. Many people appreciated Longao's arrogance, but they didn't think highly of Longao. Still, the strength of the Wanjian School was obvious. As the founder of formations, the Wanjian School's formations were needless to say. They believed that no one in the world could beat the Wanjian School. Dongfang Liang smiled and said, Okay. But Black Wolf, how do we calculate the result of your challenge to the Wanjian School? Dongfang Liang was very confident. After all, the strength of the Wanjian School was obvious. Longao didn't talk much nonsense. After all, things had come to this point. It was useless to say more. Since he had decided to challenge the Wanjian School, he had thought about all the consequences. Master Dongfang, this time I challenge the Wanjian School because I want to see a better formation master. So, if I lose this battle, I will kill myself immediately. But if I win, I want to see the Million Swords formation of Wanjian School. P.S. The second chapter is here. It won't be updated tomorrow morning because I have to sleep in. I will start writing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and update after 3 o'clock. There will be 10 chapters tomorrow. Don't rush me. Chapter 842. Infinite Ancestral Swords. Hearing that Longao wanted to challenge Wanjian School's infinite ancestral swords, everyone was shocked. They looked at Longao as if he was an idiot. Everyone knew. Infinite Ancestral Swords was one of the most powerful arrays in Wanjian School. Although Wanjian School's Infinite Ancestral Swords was not even 1,000th of the real Infinite Ancestral Swords, it was still a formidable array. For so many years, no one had dared to challenge Infinite Ancestral Swords. Given the power of Infinite Ancestral Swords, even illusionary divine martial artists would not dare to challenge it. After all, not knowing about arrays and knowing about arrays were two different concepts. Black Wolf, you are really arrogant. Dongfang Shaw sneered. He did not expect Lin Fan to challenge Infinite Ancestral Swords. Dongfang Shaw thought for a while and continued, Black Wolf, do you really think that you can defeat Wanjian School? Longao did not speak. His meaning was clear. He was ignoring Dongfang Shaw. No matter what, Dongfang Shaw was just a master and not a master. There were some things that Dongfang Shaw could not decide. Just as Dongfang Shaw was about to explode, Dongfang Liang waved his hand and stopped him. Dongfang Liang snorted. Dongfang Liang sneered and said, Black Wolf, since this is the case, I will grant you your wish. Wanjian School accepted Black Wolf's challenge. Everyone looked at both parties. Some wanted to cry and some wanted to laugh because this was the first time they had seen such a thing. Many people started to wonder about Black Wolf's identity. They did not know if he had eaten a leopard's guts. Not only did he challenge Wanzhan School's array master, but he also wanted to challenge infinite ancestral swords. Black Wolf, how do you want to challenge? Wanzhan School was the overlord of Fire Beacon City. Of course, they would not take the initiative to challenge Lin Fan. If so, they would be bullying the weak. After thinking for a moment, Longao said, let's make it quick and decide the winner in one battle. Wanzhan School can send one person to compete with me in matrices. Each person can set up a matrix and break through the matrix. The person who breaks through the matrix will win. What do you think? Before Dongfang Liang finished his words, Longao continued, as I said before, if I lose, I'll cut my own throat here. This has nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance. If I win, I'll try the sect of 10,000 swords. Longao's attitude was extremely confident. The more confident he was, the more the Wanzhan School seemed to hesitate. Could it be that this person was really an expert in array formations? Dongfang Liang sneered in his heart. He did not believe that in the small Fire Beacon City, there was someone who could surpass Wanzhan School in array formations. What's more, this matter involved the Martial Artists Alliance. Although Lu Yun and Black Wolf had said that this matter had nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance, Dongfang Liang was not a fool. If Black Wolf really defeated Wanzhan School, the Martial Artists Alliance would be overjoyed. Things had come to this point, there was no way to retreat. Okay, Dongfang Shuo, you go. Among the young generation of Wanzhan School, his son, Dongfang Shuo, was the strongest person in terms of strength and matrices. Again, with the status of Wanzhan School, it was impossible for them to send a matrices master of the older generation. After thinking about it, they could only send the number one of the young generation of Wanzhan School. However, Dongfang Liang was full of confidence, because in the whole Wanzhan School, there were no more than 3 people who could surpass his son in terms of matrices, including himself. If his son lost, then this person's matrices mastery was needless to say. Dongfang Shuo nodded, looked at Longao, and said coldly, Black Wolf, do you want to go first, or should I? Master first, after you. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Dongfang Shuo looked up to the sky and laughed wildly, as if he had seen the funniest thing in the world. Because from the beginning to the end, he did not believe that in Fire Beacon City, there was someone who dared to challenge Wanzhan School's array. Of course, everyone knew the meaning of Dongfang Shuo's sudden crazy laughter. Everyone had the same mentality as Dongfang Shuo. Not to mention others, even Lu Yun and Lu Fei of the Martial Artists Alliance were not optimistic about Longao. After all, the Wanzhan School's matrices mastery was there. Longao did not talk nonsense. He walked to the side, sat down directly, and began to prepare quietly. Seeing this situation, everyone gave him a thumbs up, because this person's courage was commendable. After all, he could still be so calm in the face of the 3 overlords of Fire Beacon City. Dongfang Shuo saw that Black Wolf was ignoring him, so he did not talk nonsense and arranged the so-called matrices on the spot. In this way, Dongfang Shuo's matrices mastery was clear at a glance. Wanzhan School had countless matrices, and the hierarchy was strict. As the young master of Wanzhan School, Dongfang Shuo naturally had access to high-level matrices. Therefore, the matrices that Dongfang Shuo arranged this time were called the Burning 8 Desolation matrices. According to Dongfang Shuo's matrices mastery, it would take at least 6 hours to arrange the Burning 8 Desolation matrices, and it would also require outside help. However, Dongfang Liang did this in secret. Otherwise, if people knew that Wanzhan School needed help, even if they won, Wanzhan School would lose face. Brother Lu, congratulations to the Martial Artists Alliance for recruiting such a talent. Regardless of Black Wolf's matrices mastery, Dongfang Liang would definitely be unhappy that the Martial Artists Alliance had recruited such a person. Because everyone knew that Wanzhan School was the founder of matrices. Under normal circumstances, any matrices master would enter Wanzhan School, but now? Was all this a conspiracy of the Martial Artists Alliance? Of course, Lu Yun knew what Dongfang Liang was thinking. He sneered in his heart and said, Brother Dongfang, you must be joking. I met this person by accident, and he joined the Martial Artists Alliance because of fate. I never thought that he would be a matrices master. Phut. At this time, someone laughed, and everyone looked in the direction of the sword sect. The one who laughed was none other than the sword sect master's daughter, Murongyanga. As the most beautiful woman in Fire Beacon City, Murongyanga's talent was even higher than Dongfang Shuo's. Moreover, Murongyanga was a fearless person. Otherwise, she wouldn't dare to laugh in front of the three sects. Yang how dare you? Dad, I can't help it. You're too shameless. Everyone knew who Murongyanga was scolding. Lu Yun and Dongfang Liang's expressions were extremely ugly, but Murongyanga was sitting there, so they could only swallow their anger. The Sword Sect, the Martial Artists Alliance, and the Wanzhan School jointly controlled Fire Beacon City. The Sword Sect was among the 10 sects. Although its strength was at the bottom, its strength was still there. Unless one had nothing better to do, no one was willing to provoke the Sword Sect. Shut up. Murongyanga really didn't know what to do with his daughter. P.S. Xiao Ju has added more chapters. Why didn't anyone vote? Even the free recommendation votes were pitifully few. When Xiao Ju is motivated, why don't everyone give her some support? Chapter 843. 3 hours later. Dongfang Shuo had successfully arranged the Burning 8 Desolation Array. If it was an ordinary challenge, Wanzhan School wouldn't care at all. But no matter what, Longao was still the Deputy Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance. Wanzhan School would more or less give some face to the Martial Artists Alliance. Black Wolf, the array has been successfully arranged. Please. Longao opened his eyes and stood up. Looking at the white light in front of him, his heart thumped. Although he didn't step into the array, Longao could clearly feel that the array set up by Dongfang Shuo this time would be very powerful. Someone had just told him the name of the array, the Burning 8 Desolation Array. Black Wolf, if you want to break the array, remember the direction. At this time, Longao suddenly heard a female voice. He was very curious because he didn't seem to have any friends in Fire Beacon City, let alone a woman. Who was it? All of a sudden, Longao looked in the direction of the Sword Sect. There, a beautiful girl was nodding at him. Without a doubt, Longao had already guessed that the person who had just reminded him of the method to break the array was this person. Murongyanga, the #1 beauty in Fire Beacon City. She was talented and beautiful. Longao was very curious. He didn't know why this person reminded him. It seemed that he didn't know anyone in the Sword Sect. Black Wolf, I hope you can walk out of here. *CK cursing in his heart, Longao didn't continue to hesitate. He directly entered the entrance of the array. In an instant, his figure disappeared without a trace. Everyone was looking forward to it. Although they knew that this person would definitely lose, many people still hoped that he could come out alive. Because the array of Wanzhan School seemed to be unbreakable, even if the Wanzhan School in Fire Beacon City was just a branch. Inside the Incineration 8 Desolation Array. Within the dazzling white space, Longao was extremely cautious. He was extremely alert because Murongyanga had just reminded him that if he wanted to break the Incineration 8 Wastelands formation, the most important thing was the location. East, south, west, and north. 8 desolates. Could it be that Ba Huang was referring to the 8 directions? If not for Murongyanga's reminder, it would not have been easy for Longao to break the array. However, the situation now was different. In addition to Murongyanga's reminder, Longao was not unfamiliar with the Burning 8 Desolation Array. This was because the Burning 8 Desolation Array that Master Fen Tian had given him included the Burning 8 Desolation Array. However, the array laid out by Dongfang Shuo was worlds apart from the Burning 8 Desolation Array in the Burning Heaven Array. Since he already knew how to break the formation, Longao did not hold back. This time, Longao originally only wanted to challenge the Wanzhan School's array master. However, on the way here, Lu Yun had told him some things about the Wanzhan School, including the sect origin swords. According to Lu Yun, the Wanzhan School's sect origin swords was very powerful. Although it was only a small version of the sect origin swords, no one could break it. Moreover, the real Wanjan School's sect origin swords was known as one of the most powerful arrays in the world. When 10,000 swords were unleashed together, it could destroy heaven and earth. The 10,000 swords array formation was the biggest reason why the sword sect and the 10,000 swords array formation had always been at odds with each other. It was because everyone knew that the sword sect prioritized the sword. They had once wanted to pay any price to obtain the 10,000 swords array formation, but in the end, without a doubt, the Wanjan School did not agree to the sword sect's request. Regarding this matter, the sword sect had always been brooding. It was precisely because of this that Longao was looking forward to the sect origin swords. Although he knew that it was very dangerous, he still wanted to try. Perhaps this was because he was an array master. Sect origin swords. Longao began to look for the eye of the array. He directly started from the 8 directions, east, south, west, and north. After searching for a while, as expected, the way to break the formation was indeed in the 8 directions. Burning to desolation. What a great burning to desolation. Longao did not hesitate and immediately started to act. It was still the same sentence. If it was an ordinary array master, even if they knew that the key to breaking the formation was in the 8 directions, it would not be easy to break the formation. However, Longao was different. Because in the Burning Heaven array arts, there was a method to set up the burning to desolation and break the formation. Regarding this point, perhaps no one in Wanjan School would have thought of it. Longao even suspected that his master, Fen Tian, was very likely to be a member of Wanjan School. Otherwise, how could the array in the Burning Heaven array arts include the Burning to Desolation array? Longao could completely assert that the array in Wanjan School, even if it was a small array, would not be casually leaked, let alone such an important array. If his master was really a member of Wanjan School, then this matter was indeed a bit tricky. Longao did not continue to worry about whether his master was a member of Wanjan School. He knew very well that if he wanted to see the legendary sect origin swords, then he had to first solve the Burning to Desolation array. According to the Burning Heaven array arts, the most important point to break the Burning to Desolation array was to attack the suppression in 8 directions at the same time. Longao stood quietly in the Burning to Desolation array. Outside the array. It had been a few minutes since Longao entered. According to Dongfang Shuo's guess, Longao could hold on for an hour at most. It was almost impossible for him to come out alive. "Brother Lu, why don't we make a bet?" Lu Yun was very curious. He did not know what Dongfang Liang was going to bet at this time. "Brother Lu, it's very simple. Let's bet how long Black Wolf can hold on in the Burning to Desolation array. I bet an hour. What do you think?" Okay. Since things had come to this point, Lu Yun had no other choice. After all, he also hoped that Black Wolf could win. Again, if Black Wolf really won this battle, not only himself, but even the Martial Artists Alliance would feel proud, especially when they defeated Wanjan School in the array. "Brother Lu, since you have agreed, then let's do it this way. If you win, in the life and death world 10 days later, one of the Wanjan School's spots will be given to the Martial Artists Alliance. This year, the Martial Artists Alliance can send 4 people to the life and death world. What do you think?" "No problem. If I lose, the Martial Artists Alliance will only send 2 people to the life and death world this year. As for the time I bet on Black Wolf, it will be an hour." Although Lu Yun hoped that Black Wolf could win, he knew his own limits. He knew very well what the Burning to Desolation array set up by Dongfang Shuo meant. As for the spots in the life and death world, neither the Martial Artists Alliance nor the Wanjan School cared much about it. The reason was very simple. Although many people knew that there was the so-called divine inheritance in the life and death world, no one could find the so-called divine inheritance in the life and death world after so many years. Even their superiors had chosen to give up. Therefore, it did not matter whether there was one more spot or one less spot. At this moment, the Burning to Desolation array suddenly exploded. Chapter 844. Boom. There was a loud noise. The whole incineration array exploded completely. Everyone looked at it in a daze, not knowing what had happened. Impossible, This is impossible. Dongfang Shuo was the most shocked one, because he had great confidence in the array he had set up. Not to mention an outsider, even a master of array from Wanzhan School would find it difficult to break the array he had set up. How on earth did Black Wolf do it? Looking at Longao's figure gradually appearing, someone in the crowd exclaimed. From the beginning to the end, no one had thought that Black Wolf could break the incineration array. What's more, it had been less than 5 minutes since Black Wolf entered the array. What did it mean to break the array in 5 minutes? Everyone was scared out of their wits. Even the people from the three forces were a little stunned, not knowing how Black Wolf did it. Swallowing hard, Lu Yun was overjoyed. He'd never thought that He Lang would actually be able to break out of the formation. What was laughable was that they'd been betting on how long He Lang would be able to last in the formation. Black Wolf, you cheated. Hearing Dongfang Shuo's words, everyone sighed. Most of them were disdainful and contemptuous. The other party broke the array, but he said that the other party cheated. With such a character, it was obvious that he would be despised by others. Come back. Dad. Come back. Dongfang Liang's face was very gloomy, because he knew very well what his son was thinking. If it went on like this, not only his son's face, but also the sect's face would be completely ruined. He Lang, you've won this battle. When saying this, Dongfang Liang wanted to go up and kill Black Wolf directly. Especially when he saw Lu Yun's face twitching with laughter, Dongfang Liang was more and more sure that this matter had absolutely nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance. What a good Lu Yun, what a good martial arts alliance. Dongfang Liang didn't fly into a rage at once, because he knew clearly that once he made trouble in his own territory, the Wanzhan School would be completely disgraced. As for the Martial Artists Alliance, there would be plenty of time to get back at them in the future. Thank you. Can I see the 10,000 swords return to origin now? After successfully breaking out of the formation, Longao was looking forward to seeing the legendary 10,000 swords return to origin. Originally, he did not think about his master, but because of the Burning 8 Desolation Array, Longao suddenly had a bold guess, and that was whether or not his so-called master, Fen Tian, was someone from Wanzhan School. If master was really someone from Wanzhan School, then if the Burning Heaven Array was a formation martial technique from Wanzhan School, wouldn't that mean that the 10,000 swords return to origin might also be in the Burning Heaven Array? But obviously, now was not the time. Longao had already thought about entering the 10,000 swords return to origin formation and see if there was the so-called 10,000 swords return to origin formation in the Burning Heaven Array. But one had to know that within the Burning Heavens Array art, there were over 10,000 arrays. Even with Longao's current array attainments, he could at most flip through a few tens of them. It could be imagined how strong the Burning Heavens Array art was. Because of this, it was still unknown whether there was the so-called 10,000 swords return to origin formation in the Burning Heaven Array. At this moment, Longao also thought of his master's traitor, Yi Wushuang. He had tricked Yi Wushuang last time, so he didn't know where Yi Wushuang was now. But Longao was very clear about one thing, that was, he and Yi Wushuang were destined to fight. This fight. Not only was it to clean up the mess for his master, but it also represented his own personal grudge. Black Wolf, according to our previous battle agreement, although you have broken the Burning 8 Desolation formation, you are not considered to have one. Now, please set up the formation. Dongfang Shuo will break through the formation. If he can break out of the formation, then it will be considered a draw. Then, you will have to compete again. Everyone seemed to have forgotten that Black Wolf also had to set up the formation. After all, setting up the formation and breaking the formation were two different concepts. With Longao's previous example, many people were looking forward to whether the formation set up by this mysterious person was powerful or not. Master Dongfang, I don't think it's necessary. Why? Because the formation I set up seems to be very difficult for young Master Dongfang to come out alive. What if something happens? Longao did not continue speaking, but the meaning in his words was very clear. Arrogant, too arrogant. Everyone was secretly shocked because no one thought that Black Wolf was so arrogant that he did not take Wanzhan School seriously at all. Ha ha ha, Black Wolf, you are too arrogant. Hearing Longao's words, Dongfang Shuo looked up to the sky and laughed crazily. His laughter was full of confidence and contempt because he had never seen such an arrogant person. Not to mention Black Wolf, even Lu Yun, the Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance, did not dare to be so presumptuous. Black Wolf, if I can't break out of the formation, I can promise you one thing, no matter what it is. Really? A gentleman keeps his word. Hearing his son's words, Dongfang Liang was shocked because the more Longao behaved like this, the more uncertain he was, especially when this person just broke the Burning Eight Desolation formation. Was this person's attainment in the formation really so powerful? If Dongfang Shuo really lost, what should he do? But things had already come to this point, so he couldn't say anything more. He could only acquiesce. But at this moment, Dongfang Liang was extremely angry. In addition to Black Wolf, he hated the Martial Artists Alliance and Lu Yun more. Because in his opinion, everything that happened today was caused by the Martial Artists Alliance and Lu Yun. If he didn't take revenge, he was not a man. Black Wolf, I'd like to see how powerful the formation you arranged is. Longao smiled and immediately began to arrange the formation. The formation he chose was none other than the one that Dongfang Shuo had just arranged, the so-called Burning Eight Desolation formation. Except for the people of Wanzhan School, no one present knew about the formation. Because of this, Dongfang Liang and Dongfang Shuo's faces gradually became gloomy and shocked when they saw the formation arranged by Black Wolf. They looked at each other and saw a trace of shock in each other's eyes. They really couldn't figure out why Black Wolf didn't know about the Burning Eight Desolation formation. At this moment, they finally knew why Black Wolf could break out of the formation so easily. It turned out that this person knew about the Burning Eight Desolation formation. The more so, the more curious they were about Black Wolf's true identity. The reason was simple. The Burning Eight Desolation formation was the formation of Wanzhan School, and no one was allowed to spread it. In this case, how did Black Wolf know how to arrange this formation? Murong Yanga looked at the young man who had been arranging and suddenly said, "The formation arranged by Black Wolf is exactly the same as the one that Dongfang Shuo just arranged. P.S. The 5th chapter has been delivered. Go to the supermarket and buy something. The remaining 5 chapters will be updated in the evening." Chapter 845. Even Murong Yanga, who didn't use the formation, found that something was wrong. As everyone knew, the formation of Wanzhan School would not be taught to outsiders. In that case, how could Black Wolf arrange the advanced formation of Wanzhan School? What on earth happened? Father. Waving his hand, Dongfang Liang's face was extremely gloomy. He said, "Let's talk about this later. No matter who wins or loses this battle, this person must not leave here." Of course, Dongfang Shuo knew clearly what his father meant. It took Dongfang Shuo a full 6 hours to arrange the same Burning Eight Desolation array, but Longao only took 2 hours. Who was higher and who was lower in the array formation could be seen at a glance. "Young Master Dongfang, please." Humph. Things had come to this point. Even if Dongfang Shuo was unwilling, as the young master of Wanzhan School, he had to save the face of himself and the sect. The moment Dongfang Shuo stepped into the formation, everyone held their breath. At this moment, everyone was looking forward to the formation arranged by Black Wolf to trap Dongfang Shuo. Longao was very confident. He came to Lu Fei, of course, in front of everyone, and suddenly said, "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you? What did that mean? Hearing Longao's words, everyone began to guess. They didn't know what Black Wolf meant. Was it a conspiracy played by Black Wolf and the Martial Artists Alliance? Dongfang Liang's face became gloomier and gloomier. He snorted. Although he didn't speak, the murderous aura emitted from his body, as if it was real, shrouded all the people around. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Murong Yanga smiled and whispered in Murong Guena's ear, "Father, it seems that Black Wolf and the Martial Artists Alliance deliberately set Wanzhan School up. There should be a good show to watch." Murong Guena smiled. The 3 superpowers in Fire Beacon City had been fighting openly and secretly. The Sword Sect couldn't wait for the Martial Artists Alliance and Wanzhan School to fight. It would be best if both sides suffered, then the sword sect could take advantage of the situation. Yang don't talk nonsense, understand? Nodding, Murong Yang looked at Black Wolf not far away. She seemed to be very interested. A cunning smile. Hearing Longao's words, Lu Fei was moved. How could Lu Fei not know what Longao meant? However, in this kind of situation, it was not good for him to flare up. However, he said very unhappily, "Hey Lang, you better pray that you can smoothly pass the 10,000 swords return to origin." Without waiting for Longao to speak, Lu Fei continued, "Oh right, I almost forgot to tell you, if you really have the chance to enter the 10,000 swords return to sect, I hope you can remember one sentence: you deserve to die." Longao smiled and didn't get angry. "Black Wolf, are you interested in joining my Wanzhan school?" Dongfang Liang chose to ignore Lu Yun and the Martial Artists Alliance. Under normal circumstances, Dongfang Liang would never do this. But the Martial Artists Alliance was unkind first, so they shouldn't blame him for being unkind. "Brother Dongfang, what do you mean?" Dongfang Liang's intention was very clear. He wanted to poach Lu Yun. He didn't give any face to the Martial Artists Alliance. To be more serious, he was seriously provoking the Martial Artists Alliance. Even if they couldn't bear it, they couldn't bear it. "Brother Lu, you just said that this has nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance. Can I assume that Black Wolf has nothing to do with the Martial Artists Alliance? If so, why can't I invite Black Wolf to join the Wanzhan school?" Dongfang Liang didn't want to do this, but the Martial Artists Alliance was so shameless. So, he was ready to give them a taste of their own medicine. Of course, Lu Yun knew what Dongfang Liang meant. Lu Yun was extremely angry. He said coldly, "Brother Dongfang, you know that Black Wolf is the Deputy Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance. But you still want to twist words. Don't you take the Martial Artists Alliance seriously? Brother Lu, you must be joking." Dongfang Liang obviously didn't want to talk nonsense with Lu Yun. Because things had come to this point, there would be trouble later. In this case, he might as well take the opportunity to win over a talent. "Master Dongfang, Hall Master Lu just said that I am the Deputy Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance. So, I appreciate your kindness." Dongfang Liang was not surprised by Longao's rejection. As for Lu Yun, he breathed a long sigh of relief. If Black Wolf really left the Martial Artists Alliance and joined the Wanzhan school, the sect would be completely disgraced. How could he explain it to his superiors? Dongfang Liang didn't continue to invite Black Wolf because of his refusal. 2 hours later, Dongfang Shuo entered the formation and still didn't come out. It was obvious what had happened. Everyone knew that even if Dongfang Shuo could break out of the formation, he had already lost. Anyway, it only took Black Wolf 5 minutes to break out of the formation. He sighed deeply. Dongfang Liang knew very well that since he had lost the battle, there was no need to continue to waste time. Black Wolf's attainment in formations was obvious. Dongfang Liang had no choice but to say, "Black Wolf, you win this battle." Black Wolf won, and Wanzhan school lost. Everyone was surprised by the result, but the fact was in front of them. Longao nodded. Since Dongfang Liang had admitted defeat, there was no need for him to keep pestering him. He removed the formation and Dongfang Shuo's figure appeared. In just 2 hours, Dongfang Shuo seemed to have changed into a different person. "Hey Lang, you've won this battle." Dongfang Shuo repeated his father's words, but he was obviously not reconciled. But it was a real shame if he refused to admit defeat after losing. One had to know that He Lang had used a high-level formation from the 10,000 formation sect to defeat him. That was the greatest humiliation. Lu Yun was extremely excited because from the beginning to the end, he didn't expect that Black Wolf could really defeat Dongfang Shuo. Black Wolf's victory also meant that the Martial Artists Alliance suppressed Wanzhan School. After all, Black Wolf was the Deputy Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance. This would never change. Longao wasn't happy at all about defeating Dongfang Shuo because he knew very well that there were at least 3 people in Wanzhan School who could defeat Dongfang Shuo. What's more, Wanzhan School in Fire Beacon City was just a branch. One could imagine how powerful the headquarters of Wanjan School was. Longao didn't continue to dwell on this issue because he had defeated Dongfang Shuo. According to his agreement with Wanjan School, he could challenge the sect returning swords formation. Longao was looking forward to this formation and couldn't wait to enter it. Chapter 846. The Million Ancestral Swords Formation. Before Longao could say anything, Dongfang Liang said, "Since you want to challenge the Million Ancestral Swords Formation, I'll fulfill your wish." Everyone was looking forward to it. Because everyone had seen Black Wolf's attainment in formations and even defeated Dongfang Shuo, everyone was looking forward to seeing whether Black Wolf could break the Million Ancestral Swords Formation. It was still unknown whether Black Wolf could break the Million Ancestral Swords Formation. But what made everyone speechless was that Dongfang Liang took Black Wolf away from the front mountain, and there were very few people watching the battle. Apart from the 3 people from the Martial Artists Alliance, there were 3 people from the Sword Sect. That was to say, apart from the people from the Wanjan School, only 6 people were allowed to watch the battle. In addition to Lu Yun and Lu Fei, there was a protector in the Martial Artists Alliance. As for the Sword Sect, there was Master Murong Guenar and Murong Yanga, who were also protectors. Outside a huge valley, Dongfang Liang showed a cruel smile and said indifferently, "Black Wolf, the Million Ancestral Swords Formation is in the valley. But I have to remind you that the formation has no eyes. If anything happens to it, the Wanjan School will not be responsible." Lu Yun didn't say anything, but just looked at Longao. After all, things had come to this point. Even if he was the Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance, he couldn't change Black Wolf's decision. This battle was full of danger. If he relaxed a little, he would be doomed eternally. Longao didn't even think about it. He nodded and said, "I'll come out." Without talking to anyone, Longao directly entered the valley. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without a trace. "Brother Lu, if Black Wolf can really make it out alive, I will do my best to invite him to join Wanjan School." Dongfang Liang had said that he didn't take the Martial Artists Alliance seriously twice. Lu Yun's face darkened. After all, Dongfang Liang's intention was obvious. If he didn't respond, it would tell everyone that the Martial Artists Alliance was afraid of Wanjan School. He snorted coldly. Lu Yun sneered and said, "Brother Dongfang, don't play with fire. The Martial Artists Alliance is not to be trifled with." Murong Guenar, who had been silent all this while, looked at the 2 people who were at daggers drawn. He said, "You two, let me wait and see if Black Wolf can come out alive." The 2 of them stared at each other. It was obvious that the Martial Artists Alliance and Wanjan School wanted to kill each other this time. If it weren't for the fact that they cared about each other, they would have already started fighting. Looking at the disappearing Black Wolf, Murong Yanga's eyes began to darken. In the valley, it was the so-called Million Ancestral Swords Formation. As soon as he stepped into the valley, Longao found a secluded place and prepared to practice the so-called formation, especially the way to break it, in the Burning Sky Formation. However, Longao didn't have the slightest chance, because the moment he stepped into the valley, the Million Ancestral Swords Formation was officially activated. In the dark valley, waves of gloomy and cold air rushed to his face. Even with his cultivation, Longao couldn't help shivering. In an instant, the whole valley lit up. Longao sighed secretly and looked around vigilantly. After all, according to Lu Yun, the Million Ancestral Swords Formation was one of the most powerful formations in Wanjan School. Rumble, rumble. At this moment, the whole valley began to tremble as if someone was moving the whole valley. Longao immediately channeled the strength in his body and forced his body to stay still. After a few minutes, the whole valley fell into silence again. Looking at the empty valley, Longao was very curious. He wondered what kind of formation the Million Ancestral Swords Formation was. If you want to start the Million Ancestral Swords Formation, you have to smash the stone door first. A voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Before Longao could figure out what was going on, a stone door appeared in front of him. Smash the stone door? Since that was the case, Longao did not have the slightest bit of courtesy. His right arm smashed out fiercely. Longao was full of confidence. With the power of the divine dragon arm, it should not be difficult to smash open the stone door. When his fist landed on the stone door, Longao didn't expect that the stone door didn't even budge. It was as if he had hit a ball of cotton. He was delighted. Longao raised his eyebrows. Of course, he would not give up just like that. He took a step forward. This time, Longao not only used the divine dragon arm, he even used the hell tiger arm. Both of his arms fiercely smashed out and directly smashed on the stone door. A strong impact sound was heard. Just when Longao thought that the stone door would be smashed open, a shocking scene happened. A strong impact sound was accompanied by a terrifying wave, and the turbulent counterattack returned. Before Longao could figure it out, his whole body flew out. If he was not prepared, he believed that he would have died by now. What the hell happened? Enduring the pain in his body, Longao coughed twice and a trace of blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. What a terrifying force. He was a little scared. Longao stared at the stone door in front of him. He finally knew the power of the Million Ancestral Swords formation. Just the stone door that opened the formation was already so powerful. One could imagine how powerful the Million Ancestral Swords formation was. Gravity space? Suddenly, Longao seemed to have sensed something. Cold light shot out from his eyes. Longao never thought that the force that shot out from the stone door would be the gravity space. Others might not know what the gravity space was, but it was impossible for him not to know. Cultivating the earth elemental art of the 5 elements heaven swallowing art directly produced the gravity space. Of course, Longao knew the power of the gravity space very well. It was because of this that he didn't expect that one day, he would be attacked by the gravity space. With a firm gaze, Longao stood up from the ground. So what if it was the gravity space? Since it was the gravity space, he would use gravity to control gravity. Longao's method was very simple. He would use the Earth Elemental Art's gravity space to see if his gravity space or the stone door's gravity space was stronger. Earth Elemental Art. While running the Earth Elemental Art, Longao gathered all the strength in his body on his fists. Then, Longao roared and smashed directly at the stone door. His fists not only used the strength of the 2 little guys, but also turned this strength into the gravity space. Not only that, in order to successfully smash the stone door, Longao just smashed out 2 punches and continued to smash, punch after punch, punch after punch. In the blink of an eye, he had smashed hundreds of punches, and every punch was the integration of the gravity space. The power of such strength could be imagined. Boom, boom, boom. The whole stone door began to shake and slowly break. Outside the valley. Hearing the rumbling sound coming from the valley, both Dongfang Liang and Lu Yun were shocked because everyone knew what this sound meant. Black Wolf had smashed the stone door and officially entered the Million Ancestral Swords formation. Chapter 847. Dad, Black Wolf really broke down the stone door. Dongfang Liang didn't say anything because he didn't expect that Black Wolf would really break down the stone door. In fact, under normal circumstances, the formation of sect returning swords didn't have a stone door. When the Wanjian school set up the formation, they set up a special test, which was to break down the stone door to enter the formation. But for so many years, no one had ever been able to break down the stone door. That was to say, no matter who wanted to enter the formation, they had to bypass the stone door directly. Since Black Wolf could break down the stone door, it showed his strength. At least his talent couldn't be underestimated. I must invite this person to join the Wanjian school. He's really a genius in formations. Hearing this, Lu Yun was shocked. He didn't expect that Dongfang Liang would think so highly of Black Wolf. That was how cheap people were. When he had it, he didn't cherish it and always wanted to get rid of Black Wolf. But now the Wanjian school wanted to draw Black Wolf to their side, and Lu Yun didn't want to. But Lu Yun was not a fool. Of course, he wouldn't choose to confront them head-on at this time. Anyway, Black Wolf was now the Deputy Hall Chief of the Martial Artists Alliance. As long as this identity was not removed, Black Wolf couldn't join the Wanjian school. No one said anything. Everyone knew that Black Wolf just broke down the stone door and didn't officially enter the formation. According to the power of the sect returning swords formation, it was still unknown whether Black Wolf could break out of the formation. In the valley, Longao broke the stone door with a punch. The moment the stone door disappeared, the valley around Longao also disappeared. Then Longao came to a boundless space. The entire space was empty. There was nothing except for the whistling of the strong wind. Longao didn't dare to be careless. Because he knew that the stone door was broken, he had officially entered the sect returning swords formation. That was to say, he would be attacked at any time. All of a sudden. Suddenly, countless sword chi appeared in the surroundings and attacked in the same direction, Longao's direction. Sword chi rampaged. The entire space began to slowly become wild and violent. The aura of sword chi swept through the entire space. There was sword chi everywhere. In other words, no matter where you stood in the space, you would be attacked by sword chi. This was the power of the 10,000 ancestral swords formation. Longao was very clear that at this moment, the 10,000 swords return to origin formation had officially been activated. The entire space was flooded by countless sword chi. The whistling sound of the sword chi rang out continuously like thunder and lightning. It was terrifying. He didn't dare to be careless. At this time, if he let his guard down, he would be pierced by countless sword chi and die a tragic death. Longao took out his blood-sucking wild saber and immediately started slashing wildly. Countless saber lights formed an aura barrier around his body. Longao even forgot how many times he had slashed out. Around Longao, the blood-red saber light enveloped him. Countless sword chi, regardless of the situation, still fiercely collided with the saber light chi shield. The sword chi and the saber light chi shield produced an ear-piercing sound of collision. Not good. Just when Longao thought that his saber light chi shield could withstand the sword chi attack, a shocking scene happened. Because the saber light chi shield couldn't withstand the sword chi attack at all. The sword chi directly attacked his body. In just a few seconds, Longao's body was covered in wounds. He was slashed countless times by the sword chi. He was shocked. What a terrifying sword chi. He had to admit that the power of the 10,000 swords return to origin formation was indeed terrifying. At this moment, Longao couldn't attack at all. He could only choose to defend. Fortunately, he had the desolate divine body. Otherwise, he would have been crushed by the countless sword chi. Longao was surrounded by countless sword chi. Each sword chi could seriously injure him or even kill him. Longao could only respond with his saber light. The blood-red saber light was particularly dazzling in the sword chi space. The sword chi was extremely terrifying. Longao waved the blood-sucking blade to the extreme. His entire body was soaked in sweat and blood. Even his beard seemed to be a little difficult. Master, I have a way to suppress the god-slaying sword. You can slowly fuse with it. When you completely fuse with the god-slaying sword, I will break the seal and the god-slaying sword will become one with you. Longao, who was resisting the countless sword chi with all his strength, suddenly heard Long Fu's words. He was overjoyed because he knew very well what the god-slaying sword meant. Long Fu, what should I do? Longao obviously knew what Long Fu meant. Long Fu's meaning was very simple. He would first seal the god-slaying sword and then fuse with it. When he completely fused with it, he would break the seal and be able to truly control the god-slaying sword. With the power of the god-slaying sword, once he controlled it, he would be able to kill enemies above his level. Just thinking about it made him excited. However, what made Longao suspicious was that since Long Fu had a way to seal the power of the god-slaying sword, why didn't he seal it earlier so that he could fuse with it earlier? Why did he wait until now? Why did he choose to do it now? What a pain in the ass. Master, if you want to seal the power of the god-slaying sword, you have to borrow the sword chi here and activate the origin energy in your body. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. I see. Longao finally understood why Long Fu didn't seal the god-slaying sword earlier. It turned out that he wanted to borrow the sword chi here and the origin energy in his body. Long Fu, if you borrow the origin energy in my body, Wouldn't I be unable to sense the origin energy in the future? Master, I've already considered this point. The origin energy that you've absorbed isn't suitable for you at all. Rather than that, why don't you seal the god-slaying sword? When you reach the peak of martial arts, you can find the origin energy that suits you. Wouldn't that be better? Longao thought about it and felt that Long Fu's words made sense. Since the origin energy wasn't suitable for him, why waste time? After all, when he reached the peak of martial arts, once he defeated the heavenly axiom and found the origin energy that suits him, he would be the real winner. Since that was the case, Longao naturally wouldn't refuse. Next, Long Fu explained to Longao in detail what to do. Longao nodded repeatedly. A few minutes later, Longao stopped defending and kept the bloodthirsty broadsword. At this moment, countless sword chi swarmed in from all directions. However, Longao looked on indifferently because Long Fu had already forcefully pulled the god-slaying sword out of the blood pool. Just as the god-slaying sword was about to leave, the god-slaying sword appeared in Longao's hand. Longao didn't hesitate and immediately swung the god-slaying sword. However, the power of the god-slaying sword was too terrifying. With Longao's current injured body, he couldn't control the god-slaying sword at all. In other words, if Longao forcefully used the god-slaying sword, it was very likely that he would be devoured by the god-slaying sword and become its puppet, Jianling. P.S. The 8th update has been delivered. Little 9 will work overtime to write the next 2 chapters. Brothers who can wait, please wait. Little 9 will try to be as fast as possible. I hope everyone has votes to vote for me. If you don't have votes, please tip me. Little 9 will not refuse anyone. Chapter 848. It was too powerful. The power of the god-killing sword was really strong. The sword chi emitted by the god-killing sword alone made the sword chi around dare not get close. Longao was not happy at all. Instead, he was very serious because he did not know whether he would be devoured by the god-killing sword or not. Long Fu. At this time, Long Fu suddenly communicated with Longao's dantian and integrated all the origin energy he had absorbed into the god-killing sword. The sword chi roared like a dragon. The god-slaying sword that had fused with the origin energy unleashed an overwhelming sword chi, causing the entire sword chi space to tremble violently. Outside the valley, the whole Wanzhan school began to shake. Everyone was shocked and did not know what had happened. Dad. Dongfang Liang waved his hand and said helplessly, "This boy is not simple. No matter what happens, we have to recruit him. It's unbelievable." Now that things had come to this point, Dongfang Liang knew very well that the sect now had only 2 choices. The first option was to kill He Lang and eliminate him completely. However, would the Martial Arts Alliance agree to that? Moreover, with He Lang's own strength and attainments in formations, it would definitely not be an easy task to kill this person. The second choice was to recruit this person into Wanzhan School and make Black Wolf one of their own. Dongfang Liang finally chose the second choice. He had decided that no matter what happened, he had to recruit this person. In the sword chi space, countless sword chi around knelt down at the same time. Yes, they knelt down. Longao had a feeling that the sword chi emitted by the god-killing sword was like a king. As for the countless sword chi around, they were the subjects. The subjects knelt down to the king. The sword chi emitted by the god-killing sword seemed to tear the whole space apart. The sound of the sword chi resounded in the space. Longao was also incomparably shocked in his heart. Because he had never thought that the god-killing sword that had fused with the power of the source would actually be so powerful and terrifying. Not only that, Longao gradually realized what Long Fu's true goal was. Because at this moment, the sword chi in the surroundings began to converge towards the god-killing sword. An endless stream of sword chi was absorbed by the god-killing sword. Longao even had a feeling that no matter who it was, as long as they dared to get close to it, they would instantly be reduced to dust by the sword chi. Such a scene, Longao had really never seen it before. I wonder if I can succeed. Long Fu had already said that this time, they were going to use the sword chi and the power of origin to forcefully suppress the god-killing sword. As for whether they would succeed, Even Long Fu was not completely confident, let alone him. Master, the 10,000 ancestral swords formation is actually a powerful sword technique. You can comprehend it and evolve it into your own sword technique. At that time, its power will surprise you. Longao, who was waiting wholeheartedly for the god-slaying sword to be sealed, suddenly heard Long Fu's words and was pleasantly surprised. Longao indeed did not expect that the 10,000 ancestral swords formation was a sword technique. If he could really reproduce a sword technique, it would definitely bring him unimaginable benefits. Master, take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I will let you feel the sword momentum first. With the sword momentum into the sword doctrine, the sword technique that you comprehend will definitely be much more powerful. Before Longao could react, he realized that the countless sword chi in the surroundings suddenly shot out a terrifying aura. The god-killing sword also shot out the same aura. Sword momentum. This was the so-called sword momentum. Although Longao still did not know what the sword force was, but since Long Fu said so, he knew. That was exactly the case. Longao did not hesitate at all and immediately began to comprehend it. Sword momentum was the aura that was condensed from sword chi. Once cultivated to the peak, it would be invincible and invincible. No matter who it was, they would not be able to block the attack of the sword momentum. This was sword momentum. Under normal circumstances, it was very difficult to comprehend sword momentum. Even if it was a supreme Dao warrior, if not for a great opportunity, they would not be able to comprehend sword momentum. Longao was very clear how important this opportunity was to him. So this is sword momentum. Gradually, Longao's face was full of smiles. Because of Long Fu's help, in addition to his own talent, he successfully entered sword momentum in a short period of time. In other words, looking at the current situation, Longao could definitely comprehend sword momentum. At that moment, the space was still filled with sword chi. However, all the sword chi in the surroundings were shooting in the same direction and entering the god-killing sword continuously. As for Longao, he continued to comprehend sword momentum. Gradually, Longao held the god-killing sword and began to dance slowly. In the beginning, the god-killing sword was controlling Longao. However, gradually, the power of the god-killing sword was sealed by the origin energy and sword chi. Longao began to control the god-killing sword. However, he was completely unaware of this. He was completely immersed in sword momentum enlightenment. Enlightenment was something that every martial artist yearned for even in their dreams. Enlightenment of sword momentum was something that every swordsman dreamed of. Momentum, condense with oneself. Sword momentum, condense with sword chi. Sword momentum, wherever the sword momentum points, the world will be destroyed. Only those who possess sword momentum can be considered a true swordsman. Only those who enter the path with sword can reach the peak. Unknowingly, Longao's mouth was already full of smiles. Longao had successfully comprehended sword momentum. Moreover, it was a sword momentum that belonged to him and was suitable for him. Regarding this, even Long Fu had never thought of this. This was the so-called opportunity, it could not be forced. Opening his eyes, Longao felt that something was wrong. It was as if he had become a different person. A swordsman should be invincible. Holding the god-killing sword, Longao moved. The violent sword chi seemed to have merged with him. His aura merged with the sword chi and turned into a cold light. Man and sword as one? Long Fu seemed to be a little shocked. This was because he had never thought that his master could achieve the state of man and sword as one. According to his calculations, it was already very good that his master could comprehend sword momentum. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, it would have been hard to believe. Long Fu was very excited. This was because he knew very well what it meant for his master to comprehend his own sword momentum and become one with sword as one. 10,000 swords returned to sect. Using the momentum of 10,000 swords to trigger the supreme sword momentum. Longao's body moved faster and faster. The sword chi that shot out from the god-killing sword turned into rays of light that swept across the space. A shocking scene happened. The sword chi that Longao shot out seemed to be able to devour any sword chi. This was because no matter what kind of sword chi it was, as long as it came into contact with it, it would be devoured immediately. Longao and the god-killing sword could no longer be seen. One man and one sword, constantly shuttling through space. Gradually, Longao's injuries began to heal quickly. This was something that Longao had never expected. Chapter 849. After an unknown period of time, Longao's figure finally stopped. Not only Longao, but even the countless sword chi around him also disappeared. The million ancestral swords array had been broken. Longao did not feel happy at all because he had broken the array. However, he was pleasantly surprised because he had comprehended the sword force, created the sword incantation and was able to control the god-punishing sword. Although Longao knew that the god-punishing sword did not have the slightest bit of power now, he would be able to merge with the god-punishing sword one day and reach the pinnacle of being one with the sword. Once the seal of the god-punishing sword was broken, he would be able to control the god-punishing sword. Master, congratulations on comprehending your own sword force and creating a new sword incantation. Longao smiled and said, I have to thank you for your help. Master, since you're the one who created this sword technique, you should give it a name. Name? Since I created this sword incantation with the help of the god-punishing sword, from now on, this sword incantation shall be called the god-punishing incantation. Looking at the space of sword chi in front of him, Longao's lips slowly curled into a cold smile. He broke out of the array. The god-punishing sword in Longao's hand slashed out without any warning. The entire space of sword chi started to shake. Following which, the space shattered and Longao stepped into it and disappeared. Longao had never thought that the comprehension of the sword force, the creation of the sword incantation and the control of the god-punishing sword would allow him to recover 50% of his injuries. Although he was still unable to fight with a martial artist in the illusionary divine stage, he would have no problem with a martial artist in the illusionary divine stage. In other words, at this moment, even if Longao met a world king or world emperor, he would be able to defeat them with the help of the god-punishing sword and the god-punishing incantation. Sword force. If outsiders knew that Longao had comprehended the sword force with the power of a holy emperor, it would cause an uproar in the mainland. Outside the valley. Seeing the young man walking out of the valley, everyone knew what had happened. The young man had broken out of the array. Helplessly shrugging, Dongfang Liang was unwilling to accept this, but the truth was in front of him. He had to accept it. Black Wolf, you have won this battle. Longao successfully broke out of the array. After this battle, Longao's name could be considered to have shaken the world. Although the 10,000 swords return to origin was only a small-scale array, very few people had been able to break the array and leave after so many years. I was just lucky. Luck. Was it really a fluke? Dongfang Liang smiled and didn't seem to mind it. He said, Black Wolf, your attainments in array formation are the best among all the people I have ever seen. I can promise you that as long as you are willing to join my Wanjan school, I will fully recommend you to enter the Wanjan school. You should know that Wanjan school is the cradle of array masters. Once you enter that place, your attainments in array formation will reach a higher level. Dongfang Liang, you. Waving his hand, Dongfang Liang said before Lu Yun could speak, it's none of your business. You'd better shut up. I will slowly settle this with you in the future. Dongfang Liang was extremely angry because he believed that today's incident was the doing of the Martial Artists Alliance and Lu Yun. He just didn't fly into a rage for the sake of his reputation. Lu Yun also knew this, and his face was extremely gloomy. He said, Dongfang Liang, let me be frank. If you insist on doing this, the Martial Artists Alliance will never let you go. Looking at the three people who turned around and left, Dongfang Liang snorted coldly. Obviously, he didn't take them seriously. After all, things had come to this point. It was better to be hostile now than later. Brother Dongfang, I will leave first. Seeing Dongfang Liang nod, Murong Guena shrugged helplessly and turned to leave. But before Murong Yanga left, she smiled meaningfully, which made Longao confused. He didn't know what was wrong with this girl. Could it be that Murong Yanga was interested in him? Black Wolf, now that Lu Yun and others have all left, why don't we get straight to the point? What do you think of my proposal? It would be a lie to say that Dongfang Liang's proposal was not tempting. As Dongfang Liang said, in the Tianwu continent, only the Wanzhan school was the cradle of array masters. As long as one was an array master, he believed that all array masters wanted to enter the Wanzhan school and become a member of the Wanzhan school. Master Dongfang, I appreciate your kindness. But I joined the Martial Artists Alliance because I have something important to do. I can promise you that as long as I finish this, I will come back. After a deep look, Dongfang Liang finally nodded and didn't say anything more. Longao didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. Looking at the gradually disappearing figure, Dongfang Shuo said fiercely, "Father, this person doesn't know what's good for him. If we let the tiger return to the mountain, there will be endless troubles in the future. Then we will lose more than we gain." Nodding, Dongfang Liang said in a cold voice, "This person is too unpredictable. Since you don't want to be a member of the Wanzhan school, then you can go to hell." After thinking for a while, Dongfang Liang continued, "I have received news that Black Wolf is among the candidates sent by Lu Yun to the life and death realm this time." Dongfang Liang didn't continue, but the meaning in his words was very clear. Dongfang Shuo nodded and said, "Father, don't worry. This time I will also enter the life and death realm. At that time, I will definitely bring this person's head back to see you." Dongfang Liang was very confident in his son's strength. But when he thought of his son's attainment in Array Masters, he was a little worried. This person's attainment in Array Masters is very strong. Even I don't have full confidence to defeat him. So, after you enter the life and death realm, you must be careful. Don't fight with Array Masters, understand? Dongfang Shuo knew what his father meant, but he was still very arrogant. Although he had just been defeated by Longao, in his heart, he didn't take this person seriously from the beginning to the end. Leaving the Wanzhan school. The news that Longao successfully broke the array had spread throughout Fire Beacon City. In other words, from this moment on, Longao had become a celebrity in Fire Beacon City. After all, not everyone had the courage to challenge the Wanzhan school and win. Seeing Black Wolf appear, Lu Yun was overjoyed. He didn't ask much, because the appearance of Black Wolf had already shown his attitude. "Hallmaster, I will come in 10 days. Good, have a good rest. We will meet in 10 days. Big brother." Waving his hand, Lu Yun said before Lu Fei could speak, "This person's identity is very suspicious, but this kind of talent is exactly what we need. With such attainment in Array Masters, I believe that even Dongfang Liang is not as good as him. He really gave me a big surprise. P.S. I will not update tomorrow morning, I will sleep in. I will start writing tomorrow afternoon. Don't rush me. Again, please vote. Little 9 thanks, Little 9 will also work hard." Chapter 850. Longao didn't follow him back to Fire Beacon City. Outside Fire Beacon City. As soon as he left Fire Beacon City, Longao's lips curled into a cold smile. He quickened his steps, but didn't use spatial teleportation. A few minutes later, Longao abruptly stopped and turned around with a smile. "Since you've been following me for so long, why don't you show yourself?" Longao was no longer the same as before. After comprehending sword aura and wielding the Godslayer sword, he'd recovered half of his injuries. Using spatial teleportation for a short period of time wasn't a problem. Murong Yanga's figure appeared with a chuckle. "You're truly a miraculous person. Black Wolf, I want to know your true identity. Not simple." For some reason, Longao felt that this woman wasn't simple. However, Murong Yanga had warned him just now. Whether or not it was useful, he was still very grateful. "Thank you for your warning. I only want to know your true identity." Looking at Murong Yanga, Longao suddenly said, "I don't know if you're a friend or foe." Upon hearing this, Murong Yanga smiled. "If we're enemies, I wouldn't have warned you just now. Black Wolf, no matter who you are, I'll keep it a secret. How about it?" Staring fixedly at Murongyanga, Longao finally nodded and said, "Longao." Just 2 words, but Longao was very clear that if Murongyanga's identity really wasn't simple, then even if he only said the 2 words Longao, Murongyanga would know what was going on. As expected. Murongyanga was not surprised at all. She smiled and said, "As expected, you really do have a great background. I've already said that I won't reveal your identity. But now, I really want to test your strength. I want to see if you're as powerful as the rumors say." At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from Murongyanga's body. Sensing this aura, Longao's expression changed slightly. He hadn't expected Murongyanga to be a saint sovereign. A holy venerate was definitely the strongest expert in Fire Beacon City. It would be more than enough for them to sweep through the other 2 factions. Because of this, Longao couldn't understand why a saint sovereign would appear in a small city like Fire Beacon City. It seemed that his guess was right. This woman's identity wasn't simple. Longao also wanted to test her true strength. Saint sovereign. Longao's expression was somewhat solemn because he might have been able to fight against a saint venerable if he was in his peak condition. However, his injuries had only recovered by 50% at the moment. Not to mention a saint venerable, even a semisage or a saint venerable would probably be corroded by his injuries if he used his full strength. So powerful. Longao was startled by Murongyanga's words. He didn't dare to be careless. He nodded but still said, "You don't have to worry about this. I will take care of it. I hope you will use your full strength later." Murongyanga didn't say anything. She only smiled as a tacit agreement. Just like that, the 2 of them stared at each other. Meanwhile, Murongyanga took out a sharp sword out of nowhere. One could tell that it was a good sword at first glance. People from the sword sect were usually experts in using the sword, let alone Murongyanga. Longao also took out his god-punishing sword. It had already been sealed, so it couldn't be discovered. Otherwise, Longao wouldn't have taken it out so casually. "Please. Please." The 2 of them stared at each other. In an instant, the 2 of them moved. Murongyanga was full of confidence in this battle. As a peerless genius of the sword sect, she had already reached a high level in sword Dao. In an instant, the 2 of them fiercely fought. End it quickly. Longao's injuries had only recovered by 50%. At this moment, he was using all his strength. If he was careless, his injuries would worsen. He might even be devoured by the blood pool. Therefore, the only way was to end it quickly. End it as quickly as possible and minimize the losses. Sword force. Longao had just fought, and in less than 3 moves from start to finish, he directly used sword force. As the power that swordsmen yearn for even in their dreams, Murongyanga was stunned for a moment when she sensed the powerful sword aura emanating from her opponent's body. "Sword force!" Murongyanga exclaimed. She had never imagined that her opponent would be able to use sword force. Just what was going on? Sword force. Murongyanga knew very well what it meant for a cultivator to possess sword force. After all, sword force was something that every swordsman dreamed of obtaining. However, sword force was dependent on luck. It wasn't something that everyone could comprehend. It was also because of this that Murongyanga was very shocked. However, the more it was so, the more excited Murongyanga was. No matter what, it was rare for a swordsman to possess sword force. God-punishing technique. Longao didn't waste any time. Under normal circumstances, it was almost impossible for a Saint Emperor to defeat a Saint Venerable. Moreover, it was Murongyanga. The god-punishing sword in Longao's hand danced at an unbelievable speed. Soon after, countless sword chi appeared around Longao. It was like a myriad of swords returning to their roots. Countless sword chi shot toward Murongyanga like a meteor shower. They didn't miss a single spot. Sword chi crisscrossed the sky and penetrated the earth. This was the terror of sword chi. If it was just sword chi, Murongyanga wouldn't care about it. However, the sword chi that Longao shot out with the help of the god-punishing sword was abnormally terrifying. Even Murongyanga was forced to retreat step by step. A saint venerable was forced to retreat by a saint emperor. Even if news of this spread, no one would believe it. Longao knew very well that controlling his strength to not injure Murongyanga was just too difficult. After all, the God-punishing sword and the God-punishing technique worked together seamlessly. Without any other choice, Longao could only use the earth elemental technique, which was the so-called gravitational space. Not only that, Longao directly used spatial teleportation and disappeared from where he was. Before Murongyanga could figure out what had happened, Longao had already appeared behind her. The gravitational space ruthlessly suppressed her. The combination of the gravitational space and countless sword chi directly suppressed Murongyanga. Putting aside Longao, Murongyanga already knew who had won this battle. There was no point in continuing. Longao, stop. I've lost this battle. Murongyanga felt a deep sense of helplessness when she said those words. As a genius disciple of the sword sect, not to mention the sword sect of Fire Beacon City, even if it was the sword sect of a higher level, or even the sword sect of a higher level, his innate talent would be unmatched by anyone. P.S. The first chapter has arrived. It's a bit late. Little Nine will immediately work harder. Even if he doesn't sleep tonight, he will finish the 10 chapters. Don't worry, if you have tickets, please send a few. Chapter 851. Longao didn't kill her. This time, it was just a spar. Otherwise, even if he could kill Murongyanga, he would suffer from the backlash of his injuries. Longao knew very well that Murongyanga didn't use her full strength. But no matter what, Longao won this battle, and Murongyanga lost. If she lost to someone else, Murongyanga might feel unsatisfied. But losing to Longao, Murongyanga didn't seem to be unsatisfied at all. Murongyanga knew very well what it meant for Longao to have sword force. Sword force. No one in the entire Fire Beacon City sword sect could have sword force. I was just lucky. Longao, you don't have to be humble. I want to ask you a question, and I hope you can answer honestly. Needless to say, Longao knew what Murongyanga wanted to ask him. Longao, I really want to know how you managed to condense such a sword force. Every swordsman wanted to comprehend sword force. The reason was simple. Longao didn't answer immediately. He lowered his head and thought for a while, then said, to be honest, I don't know how I condensed sword force. Murongyanga was very curious because she didn't understand what Longao was talking about. Could it be that he didn't want to tell her? After all, how could she not know? Previously, when I was in the Valley of Wanjan School, I encountered the so-called 10,000 swords. I kept blocking them, and unknowingly, I entered a very magical world, a world about swords. Longao didn't hide anything, but he had deleted the part about the God-punishing sword. No matter what, the God-punishing sword was very important. If it was leaked, he would be in big trouble. Longao was almost certain that the Clear Sky sect didn't leak the information about the God-punishing sword. After all, the Clear Sky sect knew better than him what the God-punishing sword meant. He believed that the Clear Sky sect didn't want to burn themselves. Sudden enlightenment. Seeing that Longao did not speak, Murongyanga became more and more convinced that what Longao had just said was a case of epiphany. It would be a lie to say that they were not envious. Murongyanga was very envious. After all, for a martial artist, sudden enlightenment was like a pie falling from the sky. She finally knew how Longao condensed his sword force. In the sword chi space, it would be strange if he didn't condense a sword force under the epiphany. Longao, do you know what sword force means? Shrugging helplessly, Longao said that he didn't know. He wasn't lying. He really didn't know the true concept of sword force, but he did know one thing, and that was that sword force was very important to a swordsman. At the very least, the power of sword force shocked even him. Sword force is praised by swordsmen as having supreme might. According to the legends, only when a swordsman has comprehended his own sword force would he be able to use the sword to enter the Tao and reach a supreme realm. So that was it. Longao didn't speak. He just stood there and listened quietly. You can say that among swordsmen of the same level, those who have sword force are almost invincible, and there are even winners. Swordsmen who have sword force can kill enemies of a higher level. However, sword force isn't that easy to comprehend and condense. It's 1 in a million. So you're really lucky, but you're also very talented. Regarding the might of the sword force, needless to say, Longao naturally knew it clearly. As for the sword force that Murongyanga mentioned, he didn't know much about it. However, Longao was very clear that his cultivation hadn't reached that realm yet. So what if he knew? Because of this, Longao didn't continue to dwell on this issue. Anyway, it was already lucky that he was able to comprehend sword force and reproduce sword techniques in the million swords formation. As for other things, Longao didn't dare to think too much. Longao, are you going to participate in the life and death world in 10 days? Nodding, Longao didn't hide this at all, because the matter of the life and death world was known to everyone. As for his quota, he believed that it had already been spread. In that case, there was no need for him to do anything unnecessary. Longao, with all due respect, you'd better not participate in the life and death world. In fact, whether the inheritance of the divine path in the life and death world really exists is still unknown. Why should you waste your time on an illusory thing? What do you say? Longao was very curious. He didn't know what Murongyanga meant. Wanjan School, Martial Artists Alliance. After Murongyanga finished talking about these two schools, she turned and left. In the blink of an eye, she had disappeared without a trace. Wanjan School? Martial Artists Alliance. Longao was not a fool. Of course, he knew what Murongyanga's reminder meant. It seemed that the Martial Artists Alliance and Wanjan School wanted to get rid of him in the life and death world. So what? Knowing that there was a tiger in the mountain, he still wanted to go there. Longao's character was like this. Although he knew that there were dangers in the life and death world, he still decided to go there. This was not because he wanted the so-called inheritance of the divine path. Longao's biggest reason was that he wanted to train himself, because only through continuous training could his strength improve rapidly. If it was before, Longao would be more or less afraid. But now, Longao was extremely confident. As long as it was not an illusionary divine martial artist or an emperor martial artist, he would be able to deal with them. Just his sword force and the god-punishing sword alone would be able to help him defend against any danger. Moreover, Longao had to go to the life and death world for Yu Yin. Lu Yun had already said that as long as he could find the so-called inheritance of the divine path in the life and death world, he would have the opportunity to go to the higher level of the Martial Artists Alliance. At that time, he would have the opportunity to see Yu Yin, the lover that he had missed for many years. No matter who was willing, he had to go to the life and death world. Longao returned to the peak of the mountain and quietly felt the sword force that he had just condensed. According to Long Fu, the sword force that he felt was a sword force that had integrated the aura of the deity slaying sword. Once the deity slaying sword was released in the future, the power of the sword force would instantly increase by 100 times. What kind of concept was this? For this trip to Wanjan School and challenging the million ancestral swords array, Longao had seen the real array. Because of this, Longao had decided that after solving the problem with Yu Yin, he must go to the real Wanjan School and see what the real million ancestral swords array was like. At that time, he might be able to have another epiphany. Master, why don't you take advantage of these 10 days to help me suppress the blood pool? What do you mean? Longao was very curious. After all, Long Fu had already said before that the dragon seal had already suppressed the blood pool. Unless the dragon seal completely disappeared, the blood pool would definitely not see the light of day again. Since that was the case, why was there still a need to suppress it? Was the blood pool going to break out of the seal? Master, the combination of the deity slaying sword and the blood pool has caused the blood pool to become restless again. I'm afraid that the blood pool will waver. Chapter 852. So that's how it was. Long Fu, how do you need me to help you? Longao naturally wouldn't hesitate in the slightest, because he clearly knew that if something happened to the dragon seal, he would be in big trouble. Moreover, After so many years of being together, he was already used to the existence of the dragon seal and Long Fu. Master, it's very simple to strengthen the seal. You just need to continuously absorb energy. This way, I can borrow the dragon seal to forcefully continue sealing the blood pool. Longao didn't say anything. So Master, I need your help to find more energy for me. After thinking for a while, Long Fu continued, I've been sensing for the past few days. Not long ago, I sensed a place where origin energy appeared. Origin energy? Hearing Long Fu's words, Longao was shocked, because he clearly knew what origin energy meant. According to Long Fu, on this continent, the heavenly Tao and the divine mathematician were existences that had truly stepped onto the peak of the martial path. The divine mathematician didn't seem to care about worldly affairs, which meant that there was only one person that could truly come into contact with origin energy, and that was the heavenly Tao. If the heavenly Tao didn't agree, how could he obtain origin energy? Could he return to the outer sea? Longao was almost certain that as long as he headed to the outer sea, he would definitely be discovered by the heavenly Tao. No one was a fool, let alone the heavenly Tao. Without needing Longao to ask, Long Fu already knew what he was thinking. Master, although the heavenly Tao is the #1 expert of the continent and controls origin energy, it's impossible for it to control all of it. I've already carefully sensed it. This origin energy is automatically sealed by the world's energy. I believe that even the heavenly Tao hasn't discovered this place. So that's how it was. Long Fu, where is it? Just like this, Longao followed Long Fu's instructions and shot towards the origin energy. The Sword Sect, one of the 3 major forces of Fire Beacon City. Without a doubt, everyone in the Sword Sect used swords, which meant that they used the sword as their martial path. According to the legends, the Sword Sect was one of the 10 great sects, and they had supreme experts in the way of the sword. They could enter the way with the sword, shatter the void, and become an invincible expert. One could imagine how powerful experts in the way of the sword were. The Sword Sect in Fire Beacon City was only one of the branches of the Sword Sect. Sword Sect Mountain. From afar, the mountain peaks looked like a sharp sword piercing through the 9 heavens. It was a spectacular sight. The Sword Sect had a strict hierarchy. No matter who it was, as long as they were not disciples of the Sword Sect, they were not allowed to step within a 100-meter radius of the Sword Sect. Otherwise, no matter who it was, once discovered, they would be killed without mercy. Longao stood in front of the Sword Sect and stared at the mountain range in front of him. At this moment, Longao finally knew where Long Fu was talking about. If he was at his peak, he would not be worried about the Sword Sect at all. After all, the strongest person in the Sword Sect in Fire Beacon City was only a holy venerable. The rest might not even be illusionary divine experts. However, he had not recovered from his injuries. If he battled too frequently, it would not be good for his body. However, no matter what happened, Longao would not reject Long Fu. Therefore, Longao did not say anything. He had already decided that even if it was a mountain of swords and a sea of fire, he would still charge in to help Long Fu obtain the origin source and suppress the blood pool. Master, you must be careful. Although there are no experts in the Sword Sect, there is a Genling. Genling? Longao did not know what the Genling that Long Fu was talking about was. Master, there are countless divine artifacts in the universe, but above them all, there is a type of overgod artifact. This type of overgod artifact is incomparably powerful, because every single overgod artifact has its own artifact spirit within it. Longao did not speak. He really did not know what a weapon spirit was. However, he could feel that the weapon spirit that Long Fu was talking about was extremely powerful. Long Fu, you are also a weapon spirit? Longao would be a fool if he still could not guess. It was also because of this that Longao was even more shocked. He had personally witnessed how powerful Long Fu was. If that was the case, wouldn't the Genling in the Sword Sect be even more powerful? Master, since you have already guessed it, I will not hide it anymore. That's right, I am indeed a weapon spirit. Long Fu, tell me honestly, are there many weapon spirits in this mainland? No more than 5. No more than 5. For some reason, Longao heaved a sigh of relief. After all, weapon spirits were too powerful. If there were 70, 80, or even 100 of them, wouldn't this mainland be ruled by weapon spirits? Master, I know what you want to ask. The weapon spirits of the Blood Pool and God-slaying sword were already killed in the battle with the dragon seal. Otherwise, how could the Blood Pool be sealed? So that was the case. But this matter is not over. Although the weapon spirit was destroyed, the Blood Pool still retained a trace of its power. If this trace of power were to escape, the consequences would be unimaginable. Especially if the weapon spirit of the Blood Pool is reborn, even the heavenly Tao would not be able to stop it. Hearing this, Longao was shocked. He had never imagined that the weapon spirit of the Blood Pool would be so powerful. It did not even fear the heavenly Tao. Fortunately, the weapon spirit of the Blood Pool had been destroyed by the dragon seal. As long as the remaining power was sealed properly and did not escape, everything would be fine. Long Fu, how powerful is the Genling of the sword sect? Very weak, very weak. What was going on? Longao was somewhat suspicious. The sword sect was only a branch of the entire sword sect. How could such an existence have such a powerful existence like the Genling? However, Longao did not ask. He believed that Long Fu would not know either. Long Fu, what do you mean? Nodding, Long Fu smiled mysteriously and said, Master, if it's an ordinary artifact spirit, I don't recommend you to deal with it. After all, it's almost impossible for you to have two artifact spirits at the same time. Long Fu thought for a moment before continuing, but Master, this Genling is clearly heavily injured and sealed by the power of the world. If you can obtain this Genling and forcefully seal it in the God-slaying sword, then the power of the God-slaying sword will be even more terrifying in the future. So it was this. Longao finally understood Long Fu's meaning. If that was the case, then no matter what, he had to obtain this Genling and seal it in the God-slaying sword. As Long Fu said, if it was an ordinary weapon spirit, he would not even think about it. He only needed to look at Long Fu's strength to know. However, the sword sect's Genling was heavily injured. If he could obtain it, then it would definitely be a good thing for him. Long Fu, do you want me to help you deal with the origin energy first, or do you want me to deal with this Genling first? Longao knew very well that he could not sense either the origin energy or the Genling. P.S. The 3rd chapter has been delivered. Don't rush me. Even if I don't sleep tonight, Little 9 will deliver all 10 chapters. Chapter 853. In the end, Long Fu chose the origin energy. No matter what, the blood pool was the most important thing. Back then, the dragon seal had erased and sealed the blood pool's artifact spirit. If the blood pool broke out of the seal and the artifact spirit reappeared in the world, it would not be worth it. Longao did not immediately head to the sword sect. The sky gradually darkened. In the pitch-black night, there were only a few frogs croaking. Longao's figure instantly disappeared into the night. Just as he was about to enter the sword sect, Longao's figure suddenly disappeared. With spatial teleportation, he was completely confident that no one would be able to discover his tracks. In the sword sect. According to Long Fu's instructions, Longao directly entered the bottom of the mountain. In an inconspicuous small cave, he found the so-called origin energy. The origin energy that Long Fu mentioned was not much. But according to Long Fu, this origin energy was enough to suppress the blood pool. Master, the Genling is next to you. Longao, who was about to get up and leave, jumped in fright. Because the entire cave was empty. Not to mention the Genling, there was not even a single strand of hair. Longao asked curiously, "Where is it?" Long Fu looked towards the southeast. Longao followed his gaze. He did not know if he did not look, but when he did, he jumped in fright. At some point, a faintly discernible ball of light had suddenly appeared in the southeast. Without Long Fu saying anything, Longao had already guessed what the ball of light was. If he was not wrong, it should be the so-called Genling. It would be a lie to say that he was not excited. But Longao did not act rashly, because this was his first time coming into contact with Genling. Long Fu was not included, so he did not know the power of the Jianling. Even if he was seriously injured, the legend of Jianling was still there. Long Fu, what should I do now? Master, this Jianling is not aggressive at all. You can do whatever you want, but you must seal her in the Godslayer sword. Otherwise, she will escape at any time. Upon hearing this, Longao heaved a sigh of relief. Since that's the case, I won't hold back. Longao stepped forward, took a deep breath, and slowly walked towards the white ball of light. After a short while, he arrived in front of the white ball of light. My luck is really not bad. Under such circumstances, I can still obtain a Jianling. God-slaying sword, please. I hope you can let me fuse with it soon. When the time comes, we can conquer the world together. Longao was very excited. After all, Long Fu had made the artifact spirit sound so mysterious. It would be a lie to say that he didn't want to obtain it. Young master, please let me go. Longao, who was about to make a move, suddenly heard a sound coming from inside the cave and was shocked. A human or a ghost? Come out. There was no response. Longao shrugged helplessly. Did he hear wrongly? No matter what, it was more important to do business. Just as Long Fu said, if the Jianling escaped, he would regret it to death. Young master, please, let me go. F***ck, he cursed in his heart. Longao was also a little angry. He did not care about the sword spirit. He began to look around to see who was playing tricks. But after looking around, no one appeared. Was he hallucinating? Young master, I'm here. Looking at the white ball of light in front of him, Longao's eyes were as wide as a bull's. He was in disbelief. Are you the one talking? Yes, young master. Longao swallowed his saliva fiercely. Although he had already guessed that the sword spirit would definitely speak, he was still a little shocked when he actually encountered this matter. However, after a short shock, Longao finally calmed down. Young master, please let me go. A female voice. Longao was not stupid. Of course, he could tell that the Jianling was a woman. This was troublesome. Although there were only 2 people in his heart, it was not nice to kill a woman like this. Master, she's just a Jianling. Longao, who was a little soft-hearted, heard Long Fu's reminder. Yes, no matter who the other party was, it was still a Jianling. It had nothing to do with him. Sorry, as long as you obediently enter the sword in my hand, I'll let you go. How about it? Young master. At this time, the white ball of light disappeared. Just as Longao was about to make a move, a white figure appeared. Looking at the beautiful girl in front of him, Longao was completely dumbfounded. Because he had seen beautiful girls before, but he had never seen such a beauty. She was a rare existence in the world. A peerless beauty. The white-clothed girl's skin was whiter than snow. Her eyes were like clear water. She was extremely beautiful, like a bright pearl. Between her eyebrows, there was a scholarly aura. All of a sudden, Longao thought of a poem. The clouds think of her clothes, the flowers think of her face. The spring breeze brushed the railings. If they did not meet on top of the Jade Mountain, they would meet under the moon in the Jade Pavilion. It was simply to describe the beautiful girl in front of him. The white-clothed girl's voice was extremely pleasant to listen to. It was like the chirping of an oriole. Longao was very clear that normal men could not resist the beauty of the white-clothed girl. However, Longao was only stunned. As for possessing her, Longao did not even think about it. If other people knew about it, they would definitely not think about it. Which cat did not steal fish? You are a Jianling. If Long Fu was not so sure, Longao would not believe that the beautiful girl in front of him was a Jianling. But it was still the same sentence. If he let go of such a rare opportunity, even he would despise himself. I'm sorry, I cannot agree to your request. But if you cooperate obediently, I can guarantee that you will not be hurt. The white-clothed girl was very gentle, as if she was made of water. After thinking for a while, she whispered, Young master, I know what you want to do. Even if I am sealed in your sword, not only will you not gain any benefits, you will also be in a lot of trouble. If he did not know that the white-clothed girl was a genling, such a gentle girl, he really could not bear to lay his hands on her. The trouble is my problem. It has nothing to do with you. You should come in. She extended the Godslayer sword. The white-clothed girl seemed to know what was going on. She sighed softly and did not say anything else. She turned into a ball of white light and disappeared without a trace. Longao already knew that the white-clothed girl had entered the Godslayer sword. In other words, from now on, there was a genling in the Godslayer sword. Once the seal on the Godslayer sword was broken, the power of the Godslayer sword would instantly increase by several times. Under normal circumstances, Longao should be happy that there was a genling in the Godslayer sword. But what was the result? Longao was not happy or excited at all. He did not know why, but he had a feeling that something was about to happen. As for what it was, he could not figure it out. Chapter 854. His expression was solemn. Master, what's wrong? Facing Long Fu, Longao did not hide anything from Longao. After thinking for a while, Longao said helplessly, I don't know why, but I keep feeling like something is going to happen. Before Longao could finish, Long Fu's anxious voice sounded. Master, hurry up and leave this place. I never thought that there would be a second genling here. A second genling? Master, the second genling's strength is not below mine. Just this sentence alone made Longao jump in fright. Of course, he knew what Long Fu meant. Longao did not dare to stay any longer. Although he had not seen Long Fu's strength, he was sure that Long Fu was very strong. Long Fu had just said that this genling's strength was not below his. Just thinking about it, this genling's strength was terrifying. However, it was all too late. Before Longao could leave the cave, a woman appeared at the entrance. She was about 25 or 26 years old. She was dressed in purple and looked very beautiful. She was not much different from the white-clothed woman from before. Let my sister go and I will spare your life. Looking at the purple-clothed girl in front of him, Longao obviously did not choose to believe her. If he let the white-clothed girl go, there was no doubt that the purple-clothed girl would not let him go. Who are you? The purple-clothed girl sneered and said, Don't pretend. If you didn't know my sister's identity, would you seal her in the sword? Since things had already reached this point, Longao naturally did not choose to continue talking nonsense. Teleporting, Longao's figure disappeared from the cave in the blink of an eye and appeared out of thin air. Looking at the empty cave and the other party who had long since disappeared, the purple-clothed girl's expression was extremely gloomy and unsightly. Bai Ling, no matter who it is, they can't take you away. The purple-clothed girl's entire body was abnormally cold. The murderous aura emanating from her body seemed to have materialized, directly enveloping the entire cave. In the next second, the purple-clothed girl's body also disappeared without a trace. After leaving the cave, Longao didn't dare to stay any longer. He shot towards the distance with all his might. However, at this moment, a figure blocked his path. This made Longao a little mad, but in the end, he forced himself to endure it. Murong Yanga, if you have anything to say, we can talk about it later. I have something important to do now, so please step aside. Murong Yanga's expression was very ugly. He said coldly, Longao, I see you as a friend, but you don't see me as a friend. What do you mean? Let me ask you. Why did you come to my sword sect in the middle of the night? Of course, Longao wouldn't tell Murong Yanga about the two genling. He was very worried because the purple-clothed girl's strength was obvious. If the purple-clothed girl chased after him, how could he resist? Murong Yanga, I can only tell you that I see you as a friend. In the past, in the present, and in the future, it will still be. If you don't want the sword sect to go down the path of destruction, you'd better not stop me. Murong Yanga wasn't an idiot. Of course, she could see some clues from Longao's expression. She was very curious, but in the end, Murong Yanga still stepped aside. Thank you. Longao didn't continue to hesitate. With spatial teleportation, his body disappeared without a trace. Looking at Longao who had already disappeared, Murong was very surprised. From the beginning to the end, she could not understand Longao at all. Combining it with the information that she had received earlier, Murong seemed to have decided on something. She turned around and left. Not long after the two left, the purple-clothed girl's figure suddenly appeared. It was as if she had teleported. The purple-clothed girl didn't know how to teleport, but her speed was too fast. It was as if she had teleported. Coldly looking at him, the purple-clothed girl snorted, "No matter where you go, don't think you can escape from my grasp." Longao left the sword sect as fast as he could. A few minutes later, he appeared at the peak of the mountain. Only now did he truly feel relieved. However, Longao was very clear that although he had temporarily shaken off the purple-clothed girl, he was still in danger at any time. Because no one knew if the purple-clothed girl would chase after him, or when she would chase after him. This time, he really failed miserably. Because from beginning to end, Longao never thought that he would not only encounter a white-clothed genling, but also a purple-clothed genling. If he didn't have spatial teleportation, he believed that he would have been killed by the purple-clothed girl. Long Fu had just said that the purple-clothed girl and the white-clothed girl were completely different. The sudden appearance of a purple-clothed girl was something that Long Fu probably didn't expect. Inside the dragon seal space. Long Fu, what happened? Why did another genling suddenly appear in the sword sect? Longao was very curious because he really couldn't understand. Even if there was a second genling in the sword sect, Long Fu should have been able to sense it. But what was the result? From beginning to end, Long Fu had only sensed the white-clothed genling. As for the purple-clothed genling, Long Fu didn't know at all. Helplessly shaking his head, Long Fu sighed and said, "Master, I also didn't think that in this small sky martial continent, there would be such an artifact spirit. If I was at my peak, I should have been able to sense the existence of this genling." But now, Long Fu didn't finish his words, but the meaning of his words was very clear. Longao had almost forgotten that Long Fu and the dragon seal had not recovered. But even so, Long Fu hadn't been able to sense the purple-clothed genling. That in itself showed just how powerful the purple-clothed genling was. "Master, I just sensed that the purple-clothed genling is very powerful. But I'm a bit curious. These two genling don't have a true body, but they are able to exist on their own." Long Fu was very clear on what Longao was implying. Item spirits were artifact spirits born from overgod items. In other words, they were the soul of the entire overgod item. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for them to exist on their own without a divine item. But now, both the purple-clothed girl and the white-clothed girl were existing on their own. As for the two genlings' divine items, they didn't know. "Long Fu, why are you sighing?" Seeing Long Fu sigh, Longao's heart thumped. That was because Long Fu rarely made such an expression. Was something really about to happen? "Master, if my guess is correct, these two genling aren't ordinary artifact spirits. They are the most powerful overgod artifact spirits in the world. Furthermore, the reason why they don't have divine items is probably because, Long Fu, hurry up and tell me." Longao was very worried. After all, the purple-clothed genling would definitely chase after him. If he knew something about the purple-clothed genling, it would definitely be beneficial to him. Author's note: the remaining 5 chapters will be delivered in a bit. Brothers who can wait, please wait. Those who can't wait can go to sleep. Tomorrow, when you wake up, please wait. Chapter 855. Long Fu's expression was grave. As the omnipotent Long Fu, under normal circumstances, he wouldn't have such an expression. He sighed deeply. Long Fu finally said, "Master, I really didn't think that the legendary artifact spirit devouring the original body really existed." Artifact spirit devouring the original body? Longao already knew what Long Fu meant. Let alone Long Fu, even Longao was shocked. Long Fu's meaning was very simple. Whether it was the white-clothed genling or the purple-clothed genling, they had already devoured their original divine artifacts and occupied the dominant position. If Long Fu hadn't said it himself, Longao wouldn't have believed that such a thing could happen. Master, this is big trouble. Long Fu didn't need to say anything. Longao naturally knew that they were in big trouble. If it was really as Long Fu said, that the purple-clothed Genling and the white-clothed Genling had already devoured his divine artifacts, then the purple-clothed and white-clothed Genling's strength could be imagined. What should he do? In truth, Longao had a way to ensure that the purple-clothed Genling wouldn't be able to find him. The only way was to enter the dragon seal space. Even if the purple-clothed Genling's strength was thorough, it wouldn't be able to find him. Perhaps even the heavenly Tao couldn't do it. The heavenly Tao. Suddenly, Longao thought of the heavenly Tao. He immediately said, Long Fu, you just said that the purple-clothed Genling and the white-clothed Genling are so powerful. Even you aren't a match for the two Genling. If that's the case, comparing the heavenly Tao and the purple-clothed Genling, which one is stronger? According to Longao, in the entire martial sky continent, other than the divine mathematician, the heavenly Tao was the strongest. The oracle and the way of the heavens could be considered to have truly stepped onto the peak of martial arts. Master, I know what you mean. Since things have come to this, there are some things that I should let you know. His heart skipped a beat. It seemed that there were still many things that he did not know. It was true that the stronger one was, the further one could go, and the more one would know. On this continent, Master God Diviner is the #1 expert. Not even the Tao of Heaven can stand up to him. Longao already knew about this. You could say that the Tao of Heaven is the second person. Once the Tao of Heaven makes another breakthrough, not even Master God Diviner will be able to stand up to it. That's why Master God Diviner sought you out, my lord. He hoped that with your latent talent and potential, he could restrict the Tao of Heaven. Longao was well aware of that. Master God Diviner had made it sound like he was teaching him the Tao of divination, but the truth was that he wanted to use Longao to help him grow stronger. Eventually, he would be able to control the Tao of Heaven. Restricting each other was the safest option. As for those two Genling, their overall power should not be as great as the heavens. However, once they refine their true bodies, they will surpass the heavens' Taos. So Master, there are still many hidden experts on this continent. They just haven't shown themselves yet. Longao nodded. In the end, the strongest existences on the martial heaven continent were still Master God Diviner and the heavens' Taos. However, Long Fu had said that once the purple-robed Genling and the white-robed Genling refined their true bodies, their power would surpass the heavens' Taos. Since there were two Genling, there could be others. It seemed that it really was as Long Fu had said. There were too many things he didn't know about the martial heaven continent. There were too many experts he didn't know about. Longao didn't continue asking. He knew that with his current power, even if he knew more, what could he do? Master, why don't you hide in the dragon seal space for now? That way, I'm confident that no matter how powerful the purple-robed Genling is, they won't be able to find you. Long Fu had already thought of this method. Without the slightest hesitation, Longao said, Long Fu, I won't enter the dragon seal space. I'll deal with whatever comes my way. If there's no danger, how can I break through? Longao was very clear that if he was afraid of danger, he could directly enter the dragon seal space. At that time, he could hide for dozens of years. At the very least, he would be able to break through to the sovereign realm or even the divine realm. However, Longao wouldn't make such a choice. The reason was very simple. First, he wouldn't sit and wait for death. Only with experience and danger would it be exciting. Second, his cultivation speed in the dragon seal space was too slow. Only under pressure would his cultivation speed rapidly increase. Long Fu naturally knew his master's character, so he wasn't surprised by this result. Since things had already reached this stage, Longao knew that he could only deal with whatever came his way. Leaving the dragon seal space. At the peak of the mountain. Longao stood alone at the peak of the mountain. No one knew what he was thinking. Young master. Hearing someone call him young master, Longao wasn't used to it. He had no choice but to take out the god-punishing sword and said, Miss, how about we do one thing? Young master, please speak. From now on, You don't have to call me young master. My name is Longao. You can just call me by my name. Longao was helpless because the white-clothed Genling was really gentle. It was as if the white-clothed Genling wouldn't get angry at all. It was always the same voice. Young Master Long, my name is Bai Ling. You can just call me Bai Ling in the future. She didn't call him young master anymore. Instead, she called him young master Long. Longao was helpless to the extreme. Before he could say anything, Bai Ling continued, young master Long, as long as you let me go, my sister won't look for you anymore. Did he really have to hand over Bai Ling? To be honest, Longao didn't have the heart. If it was an ordinary weapon spirit, he would definitely not hand it over. But Bai Ling was different. Such a gentle and kind Genling. No man would be willing to part with her. Longao was still a man. Just as Longao was about to let Bai Ling go, a purple figure suddenly appeared. The purple figure was none other than the purple-clothed Genling. Looking coldly at the young man in front of him, Xiling sneered and said, you really don't know what's good for you. How dare you take my sister away? Boy, do you not know how to write the word death? Longao didn't run away immediately. He knew very well that if he didn't solve this matter, he would be in big trouble. After all, the purple-clothed Genling in front of him was very strong. He already had enough enemies. Unless it was a last resort, he really didn't want to provoke the purple-clothed Genling. You're Xiling. So what if I am? Xiling was very confident. After all, as a weapon spirit that devoured the original body, she didn't care about ordinary warriors at all, let alone Longao's strength. In her eyes, Longao wasn't even an ant. There was a misunderstanding between us. Now, I'll return your sister to you. From now on, we'll write off our grudges. How about that? P.S. I don't want to find excuses. There was a strong wind at 12:40 last night, and the electricity was cut off. Little Nine couldn't have gone to the internet cafe that late. If Little Nine didn't want to write, he would have said it directly. There was no need to find excuses, so please forgive him. Chapter 856. Longao didn't want to cause any trouble, especially when it came to a super existence like Xiling. In the end, Longao decided to let Bai Ling go. But at this moment, something extremely depressing happened. No matter what Longao did, Bai Ling couldn't get away from the Godslayer sword because it didn't seem to listen to him at all. In an instant, Longao understood what was going on. If he wasn't wrong, the Godslayer sword had finally sealed a Genling after much difficulty. How could it let Bai Ling go so easily? This was going to be troublesome. Kid, you don't want to? Xiling's face turned cold as he looked at the young man in front of him. If it weren't for the fact that his sister was in his hands, Xiling would have attacked him already. Longao shrugged helplessly and sighed, I'm sorry, I have no choice. Longao was speaking the truth, but in Xiling's ears, the meaning changed completely. It became Longao's provocation. Provoking him? Chmph, 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 Xiling snorted 3 times in a row. His lips slowly curved into a cold smile. Good, very good, very good. No one has ever dared to provoke me. You're the first. When did he provoke him? Suddenly, Xiling, who had not moved all this while, suddenly disappeared. This gave Longao a fright. He did not dare to stay any longer. His entire body disappeared without a trace. He did not even use teleportation and just disappeared into thin air. Hey! Surprised, Xiling's body suddenly appeared. Looking around at the empty night, Xiling's face turned ugly. She couldn't figure out how her opponent had done it. Xiling was very confident. Not to mention a mere Saint Emperor, even if the heavenly Tao personally descended, he wouldn't be able to avoid detection. The more he thought about it, the more he couldn't figure it out. Kid, no matter where you go, I'll tear you to pieces. When Xiling disappeared, Longao let out a long sigh of relief in the dragon seal space. What a terrifying aura. The aura released by Xiling just now was too terrifying. If it weren't for the help of the dragon seal space, he wouldn't have been able to block Xiling's attack with teleportation. In the dragon seal space. Longao sighed deeply because he did not know why the god-slaying sword wanted to trap Bai Ling. One should know that the god-slaying sword was already sealed. Long Fu, what just happened? Master, just as I said before, Bai Ling and Purple Spirit are both super weapon spirits that devoured the original body. The Godslayer sword that we sealed seemed to have sensed Bai Ling's powerful existence, so Bai Ling was forcefully sealed by the Godslayer sword. Then what should I do? After thinking about it, Long Fu shook his head helplessly. There's nothing I can do for now. Master, unless you can completely integrate with the Godslayer sword. Once you can truly control the Godslayer sword, you can let Bai Ling go. Otherwise, Long Fu didn't finish his words, but his meaning was clear. Longao was completely depressed. According to Long Fu, he couldn't let Bai Ling go in a short period of time. After all, it wasn't easy to truly control the Godslayer sword. Moreover, the Godslayer sword was sealed. If it was the previous Godslayer sword, it would be wishful thinking to control it. Longao wasn't worried about the Godslayer sword sealing Bai Ling, but he was afraid of Xiling. Now that the Godslayer sword had forcefully sealed Bai Ling, it meant that from now on, Xiling would hunt him down endlessly. If he wasn't careful, he would die a horrible death. He was really unlucky. Of all the people he could provoke, he just had to provoke such a powerful Godslayer sword. Long Fu seemed to understand his master's thoughts. He thought for a while and said, "Master, you have to be careful. I just sensed Xiling's aura. This Godslayer sword isn't simple. If I'm not wrong, her identity should be the same as mine." "What identity?" "Master, the only thing you need to do now is to control the Godslayer sword as fast as you can. That way, as long as you let Bai Ling go, I believe Xiling won't come looking for trouble." "You don't want to talk about it?" Longao sighed deeply. He knew Long Fu very well. If Long Fu didn't want to say anything, he believed that Long Fu wouldn't say anything no matter how much he asked. The more Long Fu was like this, the more Longao was curious about Xiling's identity. Long Fu's identity was even more curious. He didn't know why, but he always felt that Long Fu had a lot of secrets on him. Longao didn't continue to ask, nor did he continue to speak. The matter of Xiling had caused him a lot of trouble. Although Xiling wasn't as powerful as the Heavenly Tao, the sense of danger that Xiling gave him was far greater than the Heavenly Tao. No matter what, he was still a secret to the Heavenly Tao. From the beginning until now, the Heavenly Tao didn't know of his existence. But Xiling was different. What should he do? Longao didn't immediately go to the peak of the mountain. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Even if you beat Xiling to death, he wouldn't think that he hadn't left the mountain. Longao sat quietly on the peak of the mountain, letting the cold wind blow. "Young Master Long, you should let me go. Otherwise, my sister won't let you go." Hearing Bai Ling's words from the Godslayer sword, Longao laughed bitterly. After a deep sigh, Longao said helplessly, "Bai Ling, it's not that I don't want to let you go. Things have already come to this point. I won't hide anything from you." Longao couldn't bear to be cruel to Bai Ling, this Genling. Even without Xiling, it seemed that he couldn't seal Bai Ling forever. Such a kind-hearted Genling, let alone him, believed that many people couldn't bear to kill her. "Bai Ling, the sword in my hand is called the Godslayer sword. I won't hide it from you. With my strength, I can't control the Godslayer sword. So, it's impossible for me to let you go." Hearing this, Bai Ling wasn't angry at all. Such a kind-hearted woman, whether it was a human or a Genling, was indescribable. The more Bai Ling was like this, the more Longao blamed himself. It was as if he had done something wrong. For so many years, Longao had never regretted what he had done. But this time, he felt that he was wrong. If he had known that Bai Ling was so kind-hearted, he wouldn't have sealed Bai Ling, regardless of whether Xiling existed or not. But now that he had made a big mistake, it was too late to regret. Longao knew that the only thing he could do now was to control the Godslayer sword. Only then could he let Bai Ling go. "Godslayer sword!" Bai Ling exclaimed. Obviously, she knew about the existence of the Godslayer sword. She exclaimed, "I really didn't expect that the sword in your hand is the legendary king of weapon spirits, the Godslayer sword. No wonder you can't control it. But the Godslayer sword doesn't seem to have any power." Chapter 857. The King of Weapon Spirits. Longao really didn't know that the God-slaying sword was the king of weapon spirits. Bai Ling, to tell you the truth, the God-slaying sword's power has been sealed by me. I see. Longao thought for a while and finally asked, Bai Ling, you know about the God-slaying sword? Is the God-slaying sword really the king of weapon spirits? Yes, the God-slaying sword dominated the world and was the king of all weapon spirits. Bai Ling, since the God-slaying sword is the king of weapon spirits, what about the blood pool? What blood pool? Hearing that Bai Ling didn't know about the blood pool, Longao was very curious. According to Long Fu, the God-slaying sword and the blood pool were actually one. Once the blood pool and the God-slaying sword combined, breaking the seal of the dragon seal would be a matter of minutes. When the God-slaying sword was inserted into the blood pool, the two didn't combine. The reason was simple. Whether it was the blood pool or the God-slaying sword, they were no longer in their peak state and couldn't break the seal of the dragon seal alone. Bai Ling, according to the information I received, the God-slaying sword and the blood pool are one. Before Longao could finish, Bai Ling said, "Oh. The blood pool you speak of, I know what it is. You're right, the blood pool and the God-slaying sword are one, but they also reinforce and counteract each other. I heard from my sister that in the entire world, the only thing that can seal and destroy the blood pool is the God-slaying sword." F***ck Longao cursed in his heart. He didn't expect the God-slaying sword and the blood pool to have such a relationship. Bai Ling, I'm sorry, but I'll try my best to control the God-slaying sword and let you go as soon as possible. Bai Ling didn't say anything. In the entire night sky, only Longao stood alone on the peak of the mountain. Longao did not ask Long Fu about the relationship between the blood pool and the Godslayer sword. It was still the same thing. Long Fu still had many secrets. If Long Fu did not want to tell him, it would be pointless for him to ask. Since that was the case, there was no point in asking. Within 10 days, Longao had almost never left the peak of the mountain. Apart from cultivating, he was comprehending the sword force. Although he had successfully condensed the sword force, he realized that the sword force could continue to grow. During these 10 days, Bai Ling did not speak again. Longao asked a few questions during this period, but the results were almost the same. 10 days later, inside the Martial Artists Alliance in Fire Beacon City, Black Wolf, you've succeeded in challenging Wanzhan School this time. Therefore, out of the 10 places, our Martial Artists Alliance will take 4. In addition to you, Lu Fei, and 2 other protectors will go to the life and death realm together. Longao was not very concerned about this matter, as long as he was qualified to enter the life and death realm. Black Wolf, you've succeeded in your challenge this time and rejected Wanzhan School. If there are no accidents, Wanzhan School will deal with you in the life and death realm. Therefore, you have to be very careful. Thank you, Hall Master. I'll be careful. Well, in that case, you can go now. Longao and Lu Fei left the Martial Artists Alliance with the 2 protectors and walked in the direction of the life and death realm. The life and death realm was discovered by the 3 superpowers in the past. Countless masters were sent there, but in the end, no divine path inheritance was found. Gradually, everyone did not believe that there was any divine path inheritance in the life and death realm. Therefore, the 3 superpowers in Fire Beacon City sent fewer and fewer martial artists to the life and death realm every year. This time, if it was not to deal with Longao, it was believed that Wanzhan School and Sword Sect would not send masters. On the surface, it was calm, but the clouds were moving in the dark. Outside a nameless valley, it was surrounded by mountains. Looking in from the outside, the whole valley was surrounded by black fog, and it was impossible to see the situation in the valley. When Longao, Lu Fei, and the other 3 arrived at the valley, the 6 people from Wanzhan School and Sword Sect were all waiting. The 3 people from Wanzhan school were undoubtedly Dongfang Shuo and the other 2. 2 of them were elders. Not only were their strength above Dongfang Shuo, but their attainments in formations were also not comparable to Dongfang Shuo. The Wanzhan school's intention was very simple. They invited Longao to join, but Longao refused. In order to eliminate the root of the problem, Wanzhan school had decided to take advantage of the life and death realm to eradicate Black Wolf. Therefore, in addition to sending Dongfang Shuo, they also sent 2 masters of formations. Longao was able to defeat Dongfang Shuo and break the small 10,000 swords formation, which in itself showed Black Wolf's attainments in formations. It was precisely because of this that Wanzhan school directly invited the 2 masters of formations with the purpose of dealing with Longao, eliminating the root of the problem and eliminating future troubles. As for the sword sect, Murongyanga personally entered the life and death realm, and the other 2 masters were not seen before. Seeing the formation of the sword sect and Wanzhan school, Lu Fei felt extremely happy. Of course, he knew that Wanzhan school was going to deal with Longao. But Lu Fei was also a little worried. Wanzhan school and sword sect were so powerful. If he entered the life and death realm and the 2 forces turned against him, wouldn't he be a fish in the moat? But it should be known that the sword sect, martial artists alliance, and Wanzhan school had always been fighting openly and secretly. Even if they took advantage of this opportunity to eliminate him, he believed that no one would know. Although he was a little worried, things had already reached this point. Lu Fei knew very well that it was too late to retreat. Black Wolf, you have to be careful. Longao nodded. How could he not know that Lu Fei was two-faced? However, Longao didn't want to talk nonsense with Lu Fei, because he knew very well that if he were in danger, the first person who wanted to kill him would be Lu Fei, not Dongfang Shuo, and not Murongyanga. Longao, Wanzhan school invited 2 masters of formations this time. According to the information I heard, the 2 masters invited by Dongfang Liang this time have reached the Imperial Realm. Oh! Longao was very surprised because he knew what it meant to be an Imperial Array Master, and he was only a Venerable Array Master. There was a gap of 1 level. The levels of Array Masters were divided from low to high: Level 1 Array Master, Level 2 Array Master, Level 3 Array Master, Level 4 Array Master, Level 5 Array Master, Level 6 Array Master, Level 7 Array Master, Level 8 Array Master, Level 9 Array Master, King Array Master, Emperor Array Master, Venerable Array Master, Imperial Array Master, and Divine Array Master. The Divine Array Master was the real top Array Master. But below the Divine Array Master, the Imperial Array Master was the most powerful. Longao didn't expect that Wanzhan school would invite 2 Imperial Array Masters to deal with him. They really thought highly of him. Seeing Longao's smiling face, Murongyanga asked curiously, "Aren't you worried?" "Why should I be worried?" Very depressed, Murongyanga sighed and said, "You broke Wanzhan school's 10,000 swords formation before. I heard that Wanzhan school attaches great importance to this matter. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent 2 Imperial Array Masters to deal with you this time. So, you'd better be careful." Chapter 858. Got it. Longao really did not place the 2 of them in his eyes. If they were Saint Venerables or Holy Emperors, he might be afraid. As for Formation Masters, Longao was very confident in his attainments in Array Formation. Unless a God-level Array Formation Master personally came, with his level of Array Formation, he could ignore an Emperor-level Array Formation Master. Longao, don't take it lightly. Wanzhan School sent 2 Emperor-level Formation Masters this time, which means that Wanzhan School has begun to pay attention to you. So what? If nothing goes wrong, even if you can defeat them this time, Wanzhan School will send more powerful people. Longao already knew what Murongyanga meant. It seemed that breaking Wanzhan School's million ancestral swords formation had indeed brought him unnecessary trouble. Longao knew very well that in this case, his identity must not be exposed. Otherwise, Hades of the Martial Artists Alliance would not let him go once he knew. In addition to Hades, there was also the first elder of the Long family, Haotian sect, and Black Wind Valley. He had to be careful. Since Murong Yanga had already said so much, there was no need for her to continue. At this time, the entrance of the life and death world suddenly opened. In the valley, black fog lingered. Suddenly, a stairway appeared in the valley, which looked extremely strange. Longao was very curious, but the others were obviously not surprised at all. They all looked very calm. The three forces had entered the life and death world countless times and had long been accustomed to it. Let's go. Nodding, the life and death world was already in front of him. Longao didn't hesitate at all and stepped into the valley with the others. In the blink of an eye, everyone had disappeared without a trace. Outside the valley, as soon as the 10 people disappeared, Dongfang Liang and Murong Guenar suddenly appeared. Brother Dongfang, Wanzhan School has really put in a lot of effort this time, sending 2 Emperor-level formation masters. If they are unlucky and die, gloating. With a cold snort in his heart, Dongfang Liang said unhappily, "This is the order from above. I can't do anything about it. As for your sword sect, you sent 2 warriors at the Saint Emperor level this time. Do you also want to kill this person? Brother Dongfang, you and I have known each other for so many years. Although we serve different masters, we can still be considered old friends." Dongfang Liang smiled, because what Murong Guenar said was right. If they didn't work for different masters, they would be best friends now, but fate made fools of them. Brother Murong, since you treat me as a friend, then let me ask you a question. Why did your sword sect send 2 Saint Emperors this time? Since things had come to this point, Murong Guenar did not hide anything. Kill. It was a simple word. Dongfang Liang didn't continue to ask, because both of them knew very well that whether it was the sword sect or the Wanzhan School, they all had the same purpose, which was to kill Black Wolf and eliminate the root of the problem. In the valley, step by step, everyone walked toward the dark valley in the distance. After a while, everyone had entered the valley. But for some reason, Longao always had a feeling that he was not in the valley at all. Without Longao asking, Murong Yanga had already said, "We are not in the valley now. You can say that we are also in the valley." Longao was very curious. He didn't know what Murong Yanga meant. Why were they in the valley and not in the valley? With a smile, Murong Yanga continued, "We have entered the valley in the valley. You have to be careful. We have really entered the life and death world. Remember, there will be 2 paths later. You must choose the path of life. Once you choose the path of death, you will definitely die. In the life and death world, there were 2 paths to choose from. The path of life and the path of death." Without waiting for Longao to respond, 2 bridges appeared in front of them. There was a stone tablet on each side of the bridge. The stone tablet on the left had a path of life written on it, while the stone tablet on the right had a path of death written on it. They were exactly the 2 paths that Murong Yanga had mentioned just now. Everyone was waiting at the bridge. Lu Fei's face was very ugly, because as long as one was not a fool, he could definitely guess that the sword sect and the Wanzhan School would definitely deal with Longao this time. Black Wolf, choose the path of life. Looking at the 2 paths of life and death, Longao did not immediately step into the path of life, which made Murong Yanga very curious. Did he need to think about it? Black Wolf, you won't tell me that you will choose the path of death, will you? Murong Yanga would never believe that Longao would choose the path of death instead of the path of life. If that was the case, wouldn't Longao's brain be flooded with water? Not to mention Murong Yanga, even the others were looking forward to Longao's choice. After all, Longao was standing in the middle of the path of life and death. It was still unknown whether he would choose the path of life or the path of death. Murong Yanga laughed. Longao looked at the path of life and the path of death on both sides, and finally chose the path of death. Seeing Longao directly walk toward the path of death on the right, everyone was shocked, especially Murong Yanga, because from beginning to end, she never thought that Longao would really choose the path of death instead of the path of life. Black Wolf, you. Waving his hand, Longao did not look back, but said, "I choose the path of death." Murong Yanga stared at Longao. In the end, she also chose the path of death. After all, she regarded Longao as a friend, a true friend. Seeing that Murongyanga also chose the path of death, the two holy emperors of the sword sect certainly did not choose the path of life. In addition to protecting Murongyanga's life, they entered the life and death world this time to deal with Longao. The sword sect had already chosen the path of death, and Dongfang Shuo of the Wanzhan school had no doubt also chosen the path of death. As for the remaining members of the Martial Artists Alliance, Lu Fei sneered and said, "A group of idiots. No one cares if you go to die. They choose the path of death, and we choose the power of life. I hope you can leave the life and death world alive." Lu Fei wished that everyone would die on the path of death. That way, the Martial Arts Alliance would be able to reap the benefits. In this way, except for the Martial Artists Alliance, the rest of the sword sect, the Wanzhan school, and Longao all chose the path of death, and the person who caused all of this was the so-called Longao. It could be said that Longao was now surrounded by enemies. Except for Murongyanga, everyone else wanted to kill him. In front of him was the sword sect, and behind him was the Wanzhan school. But even so, Longao still resolutely chose the path of death, even if he knew that there was danger ahead. There was a wolf in front of him, and a tiger behind him. If it were an ordinary person, they would have been scared out of their wits. Chapter 859. Longao had already guessed some things about the life and death world. The life and death world was rumored to have the divine path inheritance. But why had no one been able to find the divine path inheritance in the life and death world for so many years? And the three major forces had been entering the path of life for so many years, but had never entered the path of death. If the divine path inheritance could not be found in the path of life, then there was no doubt that if the divine path inheritance really existed in the life and death world, it must be in the path of death. In order to see Yu Yin as soon as possible, Longao directly chose the path of death in order to find the divine path inheritance as soon as possible. But also because of this, Longao could not figure out why the three major forces did not enter the path of death, but had chosen the so-called path of life for so many years. Longao could almost be sure that the three major forces knew about the paths of life and death. If so, why did the three major forces still do this? Unable to figure it out, Longao did not continue to dwell on this question. The more important purpose of entering the life and death world this time was to obtain the divine path inheritance and then go to the higher Martial Artists Alliance. At that time, he would have a chance to see Yu Yin. Without looking back, Longao had already guessed that whether it was the sword sect or the Wanzhan school, they must have chosen the path of death. In any case, this time the sword sect and the Wanzhan school had sent masters into the life and death world to kill him. According to the information he had heard, Longao knew very well that the three major forces had almost chosen to give up the life and death world for so many years, so the people who entered the life and death world every year were all nobodies. Only this time. The purpose was very obvious, and only a fool could not see it. Murongyanga quickened her pace and came to Longao's side, asking with an extremely solemn expression, "Longao, do you know what you are doing?" As for Murongyanga, Longao truly had a good impression of her. He firmly believed that Murongyanga did not choose the path of death to kill him. It was the exact opposite of what the others had in mind. It was precisely because of this that Longao regarded Murongyanga as a true friend. "Yang, you should know that the inheritance of the divine path must exist in the life and death world, but for so many years, no one has been able to find it. Don't you know the reason?" After taking a deep look at Longao, Murongyanga suddenly sighed. After thinking about it, Murongyanga finally said, "Longao, since you've already guessed it, I won't hide it from you." As expected. Back then, we had already guessed that the divine inheritance was within the path of death. However, after so many years, no matter how many people entered the path of death, only death awaited them. Longao had already guessed what Murongyanga had said. If that's the case, why did they still follow? Was it to deal with me? I don't need to say it. In fact, you should understand that the higher-ups gave a death order. They clearly knew that there was no return from the path of death, but they still had to follow. Longao was not angry at all. In fact, he admired these people a little. In any case, The loyalty of these people to the sect could almost be trusted. Otherwise, they would not have insisted on following the path of death, which was a path of no return. Longao, since you have chosen the path of death, then you must be careful. After all, for so many years, countless people have entered the path of death and could not leave alive. He nodded his head. How could Longao not know about this point? Be careful and alert. Not only did he have to be careful to deal with all unexpected situations, but he also had to protect Murongyanga. Longao could be sure that in order to obtain the so-called inheritance of the divine path, the three major forces would definitely send many powerful warriors into the life and death world. In the end, all of them would fall on the path of death. After a while, everyone had crossed the bridge of life and death. After the bridge of life and death, there was a black space with stars everywhere. It was as if they were standing under the stars. It was extremely beautiful. Black Wolf. Waving his hand, before the 5 people could speak, Longao had already said, "Let's talk about the grievances between you and me later. Let's think about how to deal with the existence in front of us." What did he mean? Everyone was very curious about Longao's words and did not know what it meant. At this time, Dongfang Shuo exclaimed, pointing at the huge creature in front of him and swallowing his saliva fiercely. A giant dragon? Everyone looked at the huge creature in front of them. There was no doubt that everyone knew the legendary giant dragon, but no one could figure out why a giant dragon would appear in this place. The Dragon Clan was one of the most powerful existences in the world. Long family teamed up with the Long family, which could almost compete with the Martial Artists Alliance. One could imagine how powerful the Dragon Clan was. Blue Dragon. Hearing the 2 words Blue Dragon, Longao's heart thumped. He more or less knew a little about the Blue Dragon. As a relatively powerful giant dragon of the Dragon Clan, the strength of the Blue Dragon was absolutely terrifying. It was said that the Blue Dragon had a super martial arts technique, which was to freeze anything in an instant. Its power was almost the same as that of the Ice Dragon. Everyone stared at the Blue Dragon, and the Blue Dragon also stared at everyone. Although the Blue Dragon did not move, everyone knew very well that they had been locked on by the Blue Dragon. Longao, Murongyanga, Dongfang Shuo, and others. No one dared to take a step in this situation. No one knew when the Blue Dragon would attack them. Because of this, they finally knew why for so many years, countless masters and seniors had entered the road of death in the life and death realm, but no one could leave alive. Longao, what should we do now? Murongyanga didn't care about her 2 companions at all, because the 2 of them were not from the sword sect at all, but masters sent by a higher-level sword sect. Therefore, their life and death had nothing to do with her. Let's wait and see. Longao didn't have a good way. After all, the one in front of him was a giant dragon. Although he was a disciple of the Long family and had the blood of the Long family in his body, the Blue Dragon in front of him was obviously not a member of the Dragon Clan. No one dared to move and stared at the Blue Dragon in front of them. Slowly, Dongfang Shuo and others began to retreat step by step, trying to leave here. As for killing Longao, it was bullshit. No, seeing that everyone was trying to turn around and leave, Longao was shocked, but it was too late because the Blue Dragon obviously knew what was going on. The dragon's roar sounded, and a terrifying dragon's breath instantly enveloped the surrounding space. Longao cursed fiercely in his heart. There was no other way. Things had already come to this point, and they could only find a way to leave here. Longao took Murongyanga's hand and immediately rushed forward. Seeing that Longao did not retreat but instead moved forward, everyone was taken aback. They didn't know if Longao's brain was flooded with water. Chapter 860. The Blue Dragon was guarding the space. According to a normal person's logic, they should retreat. But what about Longao and Murongyanga? Not only did they not retreat, but they also rushed forward. They were simply seeking their own deaths. However, no one cared about the 2 of them. They rushed forward with all their might. Then, a shocking scene happened. Because the life and death bridge just now suddenly disappeared, there was no way out. Who could be a match for the Blue Dragon? Longao and the others could clearly sense that this blue dragon was a spiritual beast of the titled Great Emperor level. It was only one step away from becoming a divine dragon. They were doomed. Everyone was in despair. It was also because of this that everyone finally knew why the three major forces had sent countless experts into the path of death, but none of them had been able to leave alive. In other words, unless a supreme Tao warrior personally came to the life and death boundary, it would be very difficult for anyone to walk out alive. The blue dragon's strength was too terrifying. Just its aura alone was enough to kill everyone here. But what made everyone relieved was that the blue dragon did not chase after them. Instead, it blocked the path of Longao and Murongyanga and stared at them. There was no excitement because everyone knew that even if Longao and Murongyanga could attract the blue dragon for a while, what about later? There was no doubt. Once Longao and Murongyanga were killed by the blue dragon, it would be their turn next. In other words, everyone would definitely die in this situation. Longao, we're finished this time. Longao did not admit defeat. At this moment, a dragon's roar sounded. Just as everyone was in a daze, a huge black dragon suddenly soared into the sky. Its body was similar to Longao's, but its aura was not as strong as Longao's. Another huge black dragon? Everyone was not stupid. Of course, they knew that this huge black dragon was summoned by Longao. Longao could summon a huge black dragon. What did it mean? Could it be that Longao was a dragon warrior? As everyone knew, in the entire Sky Martial continent, no matter where one went, there was only one type of person who could summon a giant dragon. Long family dragon martial artists. In other words, only a dragon warrior could summon a giant dragon. Because of this, no one would have thought that Black Wolf was actually a dragon warrior. But at this moment, no one had the time to think about that. After all, the blue dragon was still a threat to them. Longao, you really are a dragon warrior. Murongyanga didn't seem to be too surprised, because when she heard that Longao was a dragon and knew about Longao's past, she had already guessed that Longao was most likely a dragon warrior. Now, it seemed that her guess was correct. At this time, Longao couldn't care about anything else. Longao arrived on Longchong's body and looked at the blue dragon in front of him. Senior, we accidentally broke into the life and death realm. I hope you can let us go. Seeing Longchong's sudden appearance, the blue dragon seemed to be very surprised. He didn't attack immediately, but snorted coldly, You accidentally broke into the life and death realm? For so many years, there have been people who entered every other year. Was it all by accident? F*** Longao cursed fiercely in his heart. It seemed that the blue dragon already knew. In that case, there was no point in continuing to hide it. It was better to tell the truth. In that case, Senior Blue Dragon, I won't hide it from you. This time, I entered the life and death realm mainly for the divine Tao inheritance. I hope Senior Blue Dragon can help me. The divine Tao inheritance must be obtained. Because Lu Yun had already said that as long as he could obtain the divine Tao inheritance, he could enter the higher-level martial artists alliance. At that time, he might be able to directly enter the real martial artists alliance and meet Yu Yin. For Yu Yin, he would not hesitate to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. Lan Long snorted coldly again and said, "Boy, don't think that just because you are a dragon warrior that you can casually obtain the inheritance of the divine path. Back then, I promised that person that I would protect the inheritance of the divine path here. Since that is the case, no matter who it is, even if it is the dragon god of the dragon clan, I will protect it with my life unless I die." Big trouble. Longao was very clear that there was a divine Tao inheritance in the life and death realm. It seemed that it was true. But with the blue dragon's protection, it was almost impossible to get the divine Tao inheritance, unless a divine Tao warrior came in person. But would a divine Tao warrior come? They were already divine Tao warriors, so why would they take the risk to look for the so-called divine Tao inheritance? But for some reason, Longao always had a feeling that there must be a divine Tao warrior in the life and death realm. As for the result, he still didn't know. "Boy, for the sake of you being a dragon warrior, I will let you go. You and your partners can leave here. What about the others?" Longao didn't care about the life and death of the others, but only Murongyanga couldn't be harmed. If the blue dragon really didn't want to, then he would protect Murongyanga even if he had to die. Longao was such a person. To his friends, he was affectionate and righteous. Even if it meant going through water and treading on fire, he would not hesitate. But to his enemies, Longao would never show mercy, because he knew one thing clearly: mercy to the enemy was the greatest cruelty to oneself. You take care of yourself. The rest will die here. Hearing the blue dragon's words, everyone, including Murongyanga, suddenly changed their faces. Because the blue dragon's strength was there, it was not easy for them to leave here. Would Longao give up on her? Murongyanga was really unsure, staring at Longao in midair. Everyone was waiting for Longao's answer. Time seemed to have stopped. Not only everyone, but even the blue dragon wanted to know the other party's decision. Longao didn't even think and said, "I won't save my enemies, but for my friends, no matter when, no matter what happens, I will not choose to give up. Senior Blue Dragon, even if you and I fight and die here, I will protect my friends." Ha ha ha, good, I admire you. But boy, if you want to save your friends, there's no problem, but you have to take one of my moves. If you don't die, I will let the two of you leave, and you will have the opportunity to obtain the divine Tao inheritance. But if you unfortunately die, then I'm sorry, but not only you, even your friends will die. Longao was very clear what the blue dragon's move meant, but did he have a choice? He didn't have a choice. After all, the initiative was in the blue dragon's hands, and not in his hands. He had no choice but to nod and agree. Immediately after, Long Qiong returned to the dragon seal space, and Longao stood beside Murongyanga again. "Why are you doing this?" Longao smiled and said firmly, "You chose the path of death for me, why can't I choose to live and die with you? P.S. Little 9 will continue to write, the probability of a blackout is 1%. I hope I'm not so unlucky, I'll go make some noodles first." Chapter 861. Murongyanga didn't say much, but there was a strange look in her eyes. Murongyanga took 10 steps back. Longao stared at Blue Dragon in front of him and said, "Senior, please." Blue Dragon nodded in appreciation. Suddenly, Blue Dragon spat out a blue light from his mouth and instantly enveloped Longao. Puff! Spitting out blood, Longao's body was frozen. It was as if he had been frozen for 10,000 years. It was very painful. If it was an ordinary person, they would have died at this moment. However, Longao's situation was very special. He had the sacred body of desolation. Although it couldn't be said to be immortal, ordinary attacks really couldn't erase Longao. Without the sacred body of desolation, it was believed that Longao would have died thousands of times. The ice shattered, and Longao's body flew out in an instant, like a kite with a broken string. Just when everyone thought that Longao, including Blue Dragon, would definitely die, Longao turned around abruptly and resisted. Looking at Longao, who was on the verge of collapse and extremely pale, everyone was completely dumbfounded. No one could have thought that Longao could really resist Blue Dragon's move. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it even if they were beaten to death. Blue Dragon didn't seem to have thought of it either. But things had already reached this point. If he returned, where would his face go? Ha ha ha, what a dragon warrior. Boy, you're very good. Let's go. After saying that, Longao and Murongyang's bodies disappeared. Looking at the two people who had left, the rest of the people were completely panicked. Dongfang Shuo immediately said, "Senior Blue Dragon, please let us go. In the future, even if we have to be cattle or horses, we won't have the slightest complaint." Dongfang Shuo and the others knew very well that they were not dragon warriors. The blue dragon in front of them would not give them the slightest face. Were they really going to die here? They were unwilling. Why could Black Wolf leave, but they couldn't? Blue Dragon coldly snorted and said, "If you want to leave here alive, you can. Just like the kid just now, take one of my moves." Hearing Blue Dragon's words, everyone was completely dumbfounded. No one was confident that they could withstand Blue Dragon's attack. Who knew how Black Wolf did it? However, if they wanted to leave this place alive, the 5 of them could only accept it. Just like that, the 5 of them took the Blue Dragon's attack head-on, but the result was obvious. After Longao and Murongyanga disappeared, they appeared in another valley in the blink of an eye. The entire valley was shrouded in black fog. It was pitch black in all directions, giving people a very oppressive feeling. Longao, I don't know why, but I always feel like we're in the hands of someone else. Longao nodded. How could he not know what Murongyanga meant? Not only her, but he also felt the same way. It was as if the 2 of them were being led by the nose. As for Blue Dragon just now, it seemed to have intentionally let the 2 of them go. Longao didn't know why, but he had a feeling that Blue Dragon didn't use its full strength in that attack. Otherwise, he wouldn't have just suffered some superficial wounds. Although Longao was very confident in his sacred desolation physique, he knew his own limits. As a titled Great Emperor-level spiritual beast, Blue Dragon's strength could be imagined. Longao didn't tell Murongyanga about this. Yanga, be careful. Something isn't right here. I know. Murongyanga didn't know if she was really afraid or faking it. She gently pulled Longao's hand with a strange expression on her face. Under normal circumstances, Longao definitely wouldn't be like this. However, in this environment, Longao knew very well that Murongyanga was still a girl. She was more or less afraid. The 2 of them held hands and slowly walked into the depths of the valley. Every step they took was done carefully. They were fully alert and ready to deal with any sudden situations around them. Be careful. Longao was shocked and pulled Murongyanga into his arms. At this moment, countless sword auras suddenly shot out from all directions. They were exactly the same as the countless sword auras in the sword aura space. Longao naturally knew what the power of the sword auras shot out from all directions meant. He didn't dare to be careless. He kept moving around with Murongyanga. With the help of spatial teleportation, the countless sword auras wanted to hurt Longao and Murongyanga. However, Longao knew very well that his injuries hadn't completely recovered. If he forcefully used spatial teleportation continuously, it wouldn't be of much benefit to his recovery. He had to end the battle quickly. The longer he delayed, the worse it would be for him. Longao, put me down. Otherwise, you will also be hurt by the sword auras. Murongyanga seemed to have a special feeling for Longao. In particular, Longao didn't give up on her twice in such a situation. Murongyanga was even more touched. I've already said that no matter what happens, I will take you out of the life and death world. Longao ignored Murongyanga. In desperation, he could only use the power of the god-slaying sword. The sword auras from all directions continuously attacked. Each sword aura was incomparably powerful. Longao could clearly sense that whether it was him or Murongyanga, as long as they were hit by the sword auras, they would be seriously injured even if they didn't die. It was precisely because of this that Longao could only use the god-slaying sword in the end. Taking a deep breath, Longao channeled all the power in his body into his right hand. With a raise of his eyebrows, the sword aura of the god-slaying sword quickly shot out. The sword aura shot out by the god-slaying sword was like a rainbow piercing the sun. With just a circle, the sword aura had already formed an air shield. A shocking scene happened. Countless sword auras from all directions were still attacking the sword aura shield. However, the sword aura of the god-slaying sword was too powerful. The surrounding sword auras couldn't break through the sword aura shield at all, let alone hurt Longao and Murongyanga. However, Longao was still very serious because he knew that this wasn't a long-term solution. The sword auras from all directions were constantly attacking from afar. Even if the sword aura shot out by the god-slaying sword could temporarily block the sword auras, it could only block for a while and not for a lifetime. What should I do? Longao's mind was spinning rapidly. After thinking about it, he couldn't think of a better way. Where did the sword auras come from? As the saying goes, shoot the horse to shoot the man, and capture the leader to capture the bandits. If he could find the source of the sword auras, then it should be relatively easy to break through the sword auras. Longao waved the god-slaying sword. The sword auras from all directions couldn't get close to him. Longao slowly continued to shoot forward. He couldn't stay here forever. Otherwise, the two of them would be killed by the sword auras sooner or later. Longao, what should we do? Murongyanga was very shocked by Longao's strength. Even now, Murongyanga was very curious. Just how many secrets did Longao have? Chapter 862. Longao's speed was not considered fast. After all, the valley was full of dangers and he had to be careful with every step. The valley was very big. Longao walked for 2 hours and still felt that he had not reached the deepest part of the valley. What was going on? Longao suddenly stopped and said with a serious face, "Yang you have to be careful. Remember, no matter what happens, don't be more than 3 steps away from me." Murongyanga nodded when she saw how nervous Longao was. Longao's eyes were fixed on his surroundings as he waved the Godslayer sword. His eyes could see through everything. Suddenly, Longao seemed to see something. Swords. Longao found it hard to imagine that there were countless swords around the valley and that the so-called sword chi was coming from the countless swords. Although he did not know who was behind this, he had to get rid of these swords if he wanted to leave this place alive. The Godslayer sword in Longao's hand started to move at an unimaginable speed. The sword chi was like a tornado and instantly swept up the countless sword chi in the surroundings. Under the strong suction force of the sword chi tornado, the sword chi in Western Ju was instantly destroyed. At this time, the surrounding swords also began to move. A strange scene appeared. The sword chi tornado with Longao and Murongyanga as the center was surrounded by swords. There was no sword chi, but it was even more dangerous. Break! Longao roared. The Godslayer sword shot out countless sword chi and destroyed all the sharp swords around them. If it wasn't for Murongyanga's support, Longao would have fallen to the ground. Just now, in order to destroy all the sharp swords, he did not hesitate to use all of his strength. Although this could turn danger into safety, Longao was very clear that he would be devoured at any time, and even be taken advantage of by the blood pool. Longao, are you okay? Waving his hand, Longao resisted the weakness in his body and forced himself not to fall. He said, "Let's go." Murongyanga was aware of the severity of the situation as well. She did not dare to linger any longer. Both of them continued to move forward quickly. This time, there were no sword chi attacks. The two of them soon arrived at the end of the valley. At the end of the valley, which was also the so-called deepest part, there was a stone wall. It was at least a few dozen meters long, and there was no end in sight. The two of them stood in front of the stone tablet and looked at their own images on the stone tablet. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. Yang did you find anything? No. Longao's soul had entered the dragon seal space. Long Fu, can you sense what's going on here? What is this stone tablet in front of me? Although he had already sensed that there was nothing wrong with the stone tablet, for some reason, Longao felt that there was something wrong with the stone tablet. After all, the stone tablet was in the deepest part of the valley. Master, I've already sensed it. The valley you're in is actually an illusion. The stone tablet you're looking at is the exit. Just as expected. Then what should I do? Very simple. With Long Fu's help, Longao already knew what to do. He said a few words to Murongyanga. The two of them immediately circulated their soul force and poured it into the stone tablet in front of them. Then, the two of them disappeared. Just as Long Fu said, the two of them were in an illusion, and the stone tablet was the exit. Just like that, Longao left the so-called illusion. Behind the stone tablet was another mountain valley. However, Longao was certain that the mountain valley that the two of them were currently in was a real existence and not the so-called illusion from before. Before the two of them could figure out what was going on, the two of them were enveloped by a white light and instantly disappeared. Inside a cave that was neither big nor small. The layout of the cave was very simple, but it was very clean. In the middle of the cave sat a skeleton. "Senior, we didn't mean to offend you. Please forgive us." "Longao, Are you talking to him? Nodding his head, before Longao could speak, the skeleton's eyes suddenly opened and said with a smile, "You're indeed a talent. What's your name?" Looking at the skeleton's resurrection, Murongyanga was shocked. However, it was obvious that the skeleton was the so-called divine Tao inheritance. It seemed that they had successfully passed through the trial. She didn't know if it was good luck or bad luck. Murongyanga didn't say anything and retreated to the side. She knew very well that it was all because of Longao that she could pass through the trial. Therefore, the divine Tao inheritance should be given to Longao. "Senior, my name is Longao." After thinking for a while, Longao asked, "How should I address Senior?" "You can call me Yama." "What a strange name." Longao still said, "Senior Yama, I'm sorry for not recognizing you." Suddenly, the skeleton sighed deeply and said helplessly, "It's been so many years since I fell, but I still haven't found an inheritor. You're the first person to pass through 2 trials. Congratulations." Sure enough. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. The skeleton in front of him was the so-called divine Tao inheritance. However, did he really want to accept the inheritance? Longao knew very well that if he wanted to refine the divine Tao inheritance, he didn't need to wait until now. He could have casually refined any divine Tao inheritance a few months ago. No matter what, back then, he had obtained more than 1,000 supreme Tao inheritances. Any one of them could allow him to become a supreme Tao ancient martial art practitioner. However, he chose to give up in the end. Since he didn't choose to refine the divine Tao inheritance, he still wouldn't do it now. Longao's decision was hard to change because he wanted to walk his own martial Tao path. "Senior Yama, to tell you the truth, I had obtained the divine Tao inheritance, but I didn't accept it." Longao didn't continue speaking, but the meaning in his words was already very clear. He knew that as long as Yama wasn't a fool, he would definitely understand what he meant. "Longao, what was the strength of the divine Tao inheritance that you obtained?" Longao didn't hide this point in the slightest and said, "Divine concentration realm." "Divine concentration?" Murongyanga sighed because in the eyes of ordinary martial Tao warriors, divine concentration martial Tao warriors were already high above and untouchable existences. Even if it was such a divine Tao inheritance, Longao didn't accept it. If Longao didn't say it himself, she really wouldn't believe that in this world, there was really someone who could resist the temptation of the divine Tao inheritance. No matter whether Longao could do it or not, Murongyanga asked herself, she was afraid that she couldn't do it. Yama seemed to be a little surprised. After all, there were very few people who could resist the temptation of the divine Tao inheritance. Longao, the divine Tao 5 realms. What you encountered was only the divine concentration realm. You're right. Not to mention the divine concentration realm, even if it was the divine realm, so what? Longao didn't speak. "Longao, have you heard of the supreme divine Tao?" Chapter 863. Supreme Shinto. Longao really didn't know about the supreme Shinto mentioned by Yama. However, Longao wasn't a fool. Of course, he knew what the supreme Shinto mentioned by Yama meant. Could it be that the supreme Shinto was an existence above the Shinto? If that was the case, then it was really too terrifying. No matter what, he had always thought that the Shinto warriors were the most powerful existence. Especially the god of heaven, they were the pinnacle existence apart from the heavenly Tao. But now, he never thought that a supreme Shinto would suddenly appear. Longao didn't know about the supreme Shinto, but when Murongyanga heard the word supreme Shinto, her whole body trembled. Obviously, Murongyanga knew what it meant. It seems that someone knows about the supreme Shinto. Yama smiled and continued, "Since the little girl knows, you might as well tell her what the supreme Shinto represents." Longao turned around. Although he didn't speak, his eyes were very clear. Smiling helplessly, Murongyanga said, "Strictly speaking, the supreme Shinto is actually also a Shinto. However, when one's cultivation reaches this step, it has already entered another level." Longao didn't speak because he really wanted to hear about the supreme Shinto. "Longao, I can tell you this. In front of the supreme Shinto, the god of heaven can only be regarded as a joke. Without waiting for Murongyanga to finish, Yama suddenly waved his hand and said with a smile, "That's enough." Longao was very curious, but still, he didn't speak. Longao, the supreme Shinto is also a divine king. As long as you can accept my inheritance, then I can guarantee that in less than 10 years, you will be the next divine king warrior. At that time, you can soar freely in the heavens and earth. Longao lowered his head and pondered. It was undeniable that the conditions that Yama just mentioned were too tempting. If it was an ordinary person, it would be impossible to resist such temptation. Once the supreme Shinto inheritance was accepted, then one could become a divine king warrior. One must know that the supreme Shinto was a super-existence above the god of heaven. Could it be that he really had to accept the supreme divine Tao inheritance? After thinking about it, Longao finally decided to give up. The reason was very simple. He wanted to walk his own path as a martial artist. What belonged to others would always belong to others. It would never belong to him. You could say that. Refining the supreme divine Tao and becoming a God King martial artist was completely different from breaking through to the God King realm. "Senior, I'm sorry, but I still want to walk my own martial path." Hearing this, Yama's face instantly turned cold. After all, if such a temptation was rejected by the other party, where would he put his face? Earlier, when Yama wanted to find a successor, of course he would speak nicely. Now that he was rejected on the spot, if Yama still spoke nicely, he wouldn't be a god king. "Longao, do you know what the supreme divine Tao means?" Seeing that the skeleton in front of them wasn't willing to give up, both Longao and Murongyanga were curious. After all, for a super warrior like the god king, finding an inheritor was something that could be done in a matter of minutes. Because of this, Longao couldn't understand why the skeleton in front of him chose him. "Senior, I believe you should know that the martial path you cultivate and the martial path you inherit are two different things." How could Yama not know about the matter that Longao had mentioned? However, for so many years, he had been bitterly searching for his own inheritor. However, he didn't find anything. Now that he finally found a suitable inheritance, how could Yama choose to give it up so easily? However, Yama looked at the determined Longao and sighed deeply. He said, "Since you aren't willing to accept the inheritance, I won't force you. However, Longao, you have to know that if you lose this opportunity, I'm afraid that if you want to reach the God King realm in the future." Although Yama didn't finish his words, the meaning in his words was very clear. After all, the supreme divine Tao wasn't that easy to reach. How could Longao not understand Yama's words? However, Longao didn't regret it. If he wanted to obtain the inheritance of the divine Tao, he would have had more than 1,000 chances to refine it when he had obtained more than 1,000 divine Tao inheritances. However, no matter when, Longao didn't refine it. His goal was to walk his own martial path. "Senior, I won't regret what I've decided. In that case, you can leave." Yama sighed deeply. He originally thought that he could obtain the inheritance of the divine Tao and enter the higher-level martial artists alliance. However, he never expected that the inheritance of the divine Tao was real, and it was a supreme divine Tao inheritance. Longao was very confident in his own strength, but he also knew his own limits. Even if Yama's original body was destroyed and only a remnant soul existed, it was still easy for him to kill him. "Little girl, since he isn't willing to accept my inheritance, what about you?" Hearing this, Longao was overjoyed. Because no matter what, if Murongyanga could really accept Yama's inheritance, he was really happy for Murongyanga. After all, Yama was a supreme divine Tao warrior. If Murongyanga could really obtain the inheritance, it would be great news for her to become a divine king warrior in the future. Longao looked at Murongyanga. He sincerely hoped that Murongyanga would agree. But the result made Longao's jaw drop. "Sorry, I'm not interested in your inheritance." Hearing this, Yama was furious. However, for some reason, Yama's expression softened instantly. He smiled and said, "I can't wait much longer. Since I'm fated to be with you, Take my inheritance out and help me find a fated person. Huh? What happened? Just now, when Murongyanga rejected Yama's inheritance, Longao clearly sensed a strong murderous aura from Yama. However, for some reason, Yama's aura suddenly changed. Not only was there no murderous aura, but he was also calm and even allowed them to take the inheritance out. This change seemed to be too fast, so fast that it was a bit fake. Longao didn't know what was going on with Yama, but since Yama was willing to let them take the inheritance out, it was always a good thing. He nodded and said, "We will not disappoint you and help you find a fated person to inherit your inheritance." Yama smiled and nodded. He waved his hand, and a golden core appeared in Longao's hand. Yama said, "This golden core is my inheritance. You can leave. From now on, don't enter the life and death realm, because the life and death realm will be closed from now on." Although Longao was a little unwilling, he was content. Although he didn't get the divine Tao inheritance that he had imagined, he got a supreme divine Tao inheritance. P.S. After yesterday's 10 chapters, I'll update 5 chapters today. There's no status. I'll rest for a day. Maybe it's because I've been staying up too late these days. Chapter 864. Longao and Murongyanga were transferred out of the life and death realm. As for Yama, according to his intention, the life and death realm would be closed from now on, or even disappear. Outside the life and death realm. Looking at Longao and Murongyanga who came out alive, Lu Fei's face was extremely gloomy. It was as ugly as it could get. Because from the beginning to the end, Lu Fei never thought that Longao could leave the life and death realm alive. Congratulations. Same to you. Black Wolf, where are the others? In fact, Lu Fei had already guessed that the people of the Sword Sect and Wanzhan School were probably dead, so he was very excited. Longao smiled and did not speak. Black Wolf, I have something to do back to the sect. I'll find you later. Nodding, looking at Murongyanga who had left, Longao said, the others are dead. We met the Blue Dragon in the path of death. Blue Dragon? Hearing Longao's words, Lu Fei was shocked and snorted in his heart. In fact, Lu Fei did not believe Longao's words at all. Because in his opinion, if there was a blue dragon in the life and death realm, how could Longao and Murongyanga come out alive? Although he was very afraid of Longao's attainments in formations, as for strength, Lu Fei did not take Longao seriously at all. Although Black Wolf had defeated him. Brother Dongfang, if there is no accident, our people have all died in the life and death realm. Dongfang Liang snorted and said, it seems that they have entered the path of death. Brother Murong, this time Black Wolf and Yanga can come out alive. They must know what is in the path of death. Waving his hand, Murong Guenar already knew what Dongfang Liang wanted to say before he finished speaking. I know what to do. I'll find you later. Inside the Martial Artists Alliance in Fire Beacon City. Longao, Lu Fei, and the other 3 returned smoothly. The Martial Artists Alliance won this round. After all, the Sword Sect, Martial Artists Alliance, and Wanzhan School entered the life and death world together. Except for Murongyanga, the Sword Sect and Wanzhan School were all wiped out. Congratulations, Vice Hall Master. What have you gained from your trip to the life and death world? Lu Yun was also very surprised that Longao could come out alive. After all, he already knew that Longao entered the life and death realm and ultimately chose the path of death instead of the path of life. It should be known that for so many years, none of the people who entered the path of death from the 3 superforces could leave the life and death world alive. In other words, Longao and Murongyanga were the first to come out of the life and death realm. That was why he wanted to know what was inside the path of death in the world of life and death, and whether Black Wolf had obtained a divine Tao heritage. He shook his head. How could Longao not know what Lu Yun meant? Smiling helplessly, Longao said, Hall Master, I know what you want to ask. To be honest, when we entered the path of death this time, we encountered the Blue Dragon. If I hadn't used a formation to resist the Blue Dragon, we wouldn't have been able to leave the life and death world. Without waiting for Lu Yun to speak, Longao continued, As for the legendary divine Dao heritage, I didn't see it. Hallmaster, you should know what the blue dragon means. Nodding his head, Lu Yun was also very surprised. He didn't expect the blue dragon to exist in the life and death world. Lu Yun was different from Lu Fei because he knew very well that Black Wolf had no reason to lie to him. If that was the case, he could already be sure that those who entered the life and death world would die on the path of death. It turned out that the blue dragon existed. In that case, the matter of the life and death world will come to an end for the time being. I will report this matter to the higher-ups. About the divine Dao heritage, Longao didn't tell Lu Yun about Yama, because he knew very well that once the news of the divine Dao heritage leaked out, he would be in endless trouble. Hallmaster, in the life and death world, I didn't obtain the divine Dao heritage. I want to ask if I can enter the Martial Artists Alliance on the next level. This was what Longao was most concerned about. Did he really have to hand over the supreme divine Dao heritage? After thinking for a while, Lu Yun said, Black Wolf, I also want to know why you always want to go to the higher level Martial Artists Alliance. Isn't it good to be here with me? I can guarantee that whether it's now or in the future, you will be the Vice Hall Master of the Martial Artists Alliance, and you can even take over my position in the future. Why not? Such a temptation was undeniably huge. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely agree. However, Longao didn't care about the Vice Hall Master. Not to mention the Vice Hall Master, he wasn't interested in the position of Hall Master, even if it was the chief of the Martial Artists Alliance. Again, he only had one goal, and that was to see Yu Yin as soon as possible. Thank you, Hall Master. To be honest, the reason I want to enter the Martial Artists Alliance is mainly because of a woman. A woman? Hearing Longao's words, Lu Yun finally understood what was going on. Without asking further, Lu Yun nodded and said, if you want to enter the Martial Artists Alliance, it seems a little impossible. You should know that the Martial Artists Alliance in Fire Beacon City is only a branch. Longao didn't say anything. Of course, Longao knew what Lu Yun was talking about. After thinking for a while, Lu Yun said, Black Wolf, in 3 days, there will be a martial artist assessment in Blackwater City. You can represent me and go. If you are lucky, you can stay in Blackwater City. As for whether you can continue to go to the Martial Artists Alliance, that will depend on your luck. Longao already knew what Lu Yun meant. Nodding, Longao didn't know whether Lu Yun was a friend or a foe. After all, Lu Fei and Lu Yun were definitely enemies. After Longao left, Lu Fei walked out from the back hall and asked coldly, Big brother, why did you recommend him to go to Blackwater City? If the Martial Artists Alliance in Blackwater City really thinks highly of him, won't we be in trouble? Lu Yun sneered and said eerily, with our strength, we won't be able to kill him. If that's the case, why don't we kill him with a borrowed knife? How do we kill him with a borrowed knife? The Martial Artists Alliance in Blackwater City owes us a favor. We can take this opportunity to get it back. So that's how it is. Hearing his big brother's idea, Lu Fei laughed. After all, the Martial Artists Alliance in Blackwater City was powerful. No matter how good Black Wolf's formation skills were, he wouldn't be able to resist Blackwater City. Besides the Martial Artists Alliance, I believe the Sword Sect and Wanjian School also want to deal with this person. Why don't we just sit back and reap the benefits? Big brother, I understand. I'll go to Blackwater City right now to arrange everything. This time, no matter what happens, I want this person to die without a burial place. Lu Yun smiled and didn't stop him. It was a silent agreement. Just like that, without Longao knowing, Lu Yun and Lu Fei were shamelessly scheming against him. P.S. I'm not in the mood to write today. I'll just finish what I wrote yesterday and give myself a day off. Good night, everyone. Chapter 865. Longao had no idea about Lu Yun and Lu Fei's scheme from the beginning to the end. Longao knew very well that some enemies would always be enemies and would never become friends. That was exactly the case. From the beginning to the end, Longao had never trusted Lu Yun and Lu Fei. Longao found an inn and stayed for the time being. According to Lu Yun, the martial artist demonstration in Blackwater City would take place in a dozen or so days, and he would depart in 3 days. Taking advantage of these 3 days, Longao prepared to properly stabilize the sword force that he had condensed. Longao already had a preliminary understanding of the power of sword force. In the previous battle between him and Murongyang's strength was above his. Under normal circumstances, unless he used all his trump cards, it would not be easy to defeat Murongyang. The next day, at night, stars dotted the sky. Longao was still unable to enter the state to cultivate. He kept having the feeling that something was going to happen, and this bad premonition was getting stronger and stronger. Longao had always believed in his own feelings. Could it be that something was really going to happen? After leaving the inn, Longao walked on the street. Because it was the middle of the night, the entire street was quiet and empty. It was pitch black, and Longao's expression was extremely solemn. What is going to happen? At this moment, the surrounding space began to tremble, and the spatial ripples were somewhat chaotic. If it was an ordinary person, they would not be able to sense that something was wrong with the space, but Longao's situation was completely different. Longao, who constantly cultivated spatial teleportation and absorbed a large amount of spatial energy, had an extraordinary perception of space. When the space had just trembled, Longao had already sensed it. He did not dare to be careless. Before Longao could react, a sword chi had already shot over. If he had not sensed that something was wrong with the space just now, he believed that he would have been killed by the sword chi. Divine Dao martial artist. Longao could clearly sense that the other party was a supreme Dao martial artist. Because of this, Longao could not figure out who wanted to kill him. Could it be the Martial Artists Alliance? Or the Sword Sect? Or Wanzhan School? If it really was the 3 superpowers, then the 3 superpowers really did think highly of him. Longao dodged the sword chi in time. He was very afraid of Supreme Dao warriors, because Longao was very clear that with his current strength, he was simply not a match for Supreme Dao warriors. Longao, hand over the god-slaying sword, or die. Yang Yu. Longao finally knew who had come. He already knew that Yang Yu could use the remaining energy of the blood pool to lock onto his position, but he never thought that Yang Yu would be able to find him in such a short period of time. Man proposes, God disposes. Since things had already come to this point, Longao naturally wouldn't choose to sit and wait for death. So what if he was a supreme Dao martial artist? So what if he was Yang Yu? For so many years, he had encountered too many dangers, but when did he not turn danger into safety? Longao was very confident. Since he could turn danger into safety in the past, he could do it again this time. Longao didn't immediately use spatial teleportation. He was very clear that Yang Yu had used some kind of secret skill to be able to use space to find him. If he used spatial teleportation now, under the collision of space, he was afraid that he would be directly killed by space. Unless it was a last resort, Longao would never take the risk. You want the god-slaying sword? Yang Yu's first sword didn't succeed in killing the target, so he didn't continue to attack. Instead, he stood opposite Longao, and his whole body was enveloped by a bloody aura, which gave people a very terrifying feeling. As for Yang Yu's situation, perhaps others didn't know, but how could Longao not know? Puppet. Longao knew that even if Yang Yu wasn't a real blood pool puppet now, at this rate of development, he would become one sooner or later. Longao, do you really think you can escape from my palm? Looking at the confident Yang Yu, Longao sneered and said, Yang Yu, I think you should kill yourself. Yang Yu didn't speak, but looked at the young man in front of him with interest. Yang Yu, you and this god-slaying sword couldn't make me stay at that time. If I were you, I would buy 2 pounds of tofu and go home to slowly kill myself, so that I don't live in this world and make a fool of myself. What do you say? One had to admit that Longao was indeed very arrogant. After all, Yang Yu was a supreme Dao martial artist, and his strength had increased greatly after absorbing the remaining power of the blood pool. Because of the increase in strength, Yang Yu didn't have the slightest anger. He sneered and said, Longao, you were lucky last time. This time, I'd like to see how you can escape from me. Really? As soon as Longao finished speaking, his body disappeared into thin air in the next second. That's right, he disappeared into thin air in front of a supreme Dao martial artist. Looking at the sudden disappearance of Longao, Yang Yu was shocked because he didn't know how Longao did it. However, when Longao suddenly disappeared and left last time, he had already guessed that Longao must have cultivated some kind of spatial martial skill or had some kind of spatial artifact. Otherwise, it was impossible for Longao to disappear into thin air. According to the speed at which Yang Yu absorbed the power of the blood pool, he could have come and locked on to Longao's position long ago. However, Yang Yu didn't come for a long time in order to guard against Longao's sudden disappearance. Therefore, he used spatial power just now because Yang Yu knew that as long as Longao dared to use spatial power, he would definitely be crushed by the space and die without a burial place. However, the result? Even if he used spatial power, Longao still disappeared under his nose. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. Longao, you can't escape. No matter where you run to, I will tear you into pieces. At this moment, Yang Yu was furious to the extreme. Originally, he thought that he could easily deal with Longao after absorbing the power of the blood pool. However, he didn't expect that he wouldn't even have the chance to attack and Longao had already escaped. How did Longao do it? In the dragon seal space. Longao wasn't a fool. How could he not know what Yang Yu was thinking? Therefore, he didn't use spatial teleportation even though he knew that he wasn't Longao's match. The reason why Longao was so confident was because of the existence of the dragon seal space. Master, Yang Yu is using the remaining power of the blood pool. No matter where you go, he will be able to lock on to your position. Unless your cultivation is above his, you will have endless troubles. Nodding his head, Longao knew what Long Fu meant. However, he was helpless. After all, his aura had been locked on by Yang Yu. Yang Yu couldn't do it, but with the power of the blood pool, it was a different story. PA, what's there to scold? I'm not in the mood to write. If I force myself to write, it will be trash. It will be a complete waste of everyone's money. It will make Little Nine feel guilty, so Little Nine won't force himself to write. When the state is better, he will continue to explode. Chapter 866. Long Fu, what should I do to prevent Yang Yu from locking onto my position? Longao was frustrated. If he could not remove the lock, wouldn't he be locked onto by Yang Yu no matter where he went? If that was the case, not only would he be in trouble, but he might also be killed by Yang Yu at any time. Long Fu thought about it and shook his head. Master, there is only one way to remove Yang Yu's lock on you, which is to use the power of the blood pool to cover her power. Longao was not a fool. He knew what that meant. Once he used the power of the blood pool, he might be attacked at any time and the consequences would be unimaginable. Hence, Longao knew that he could not use the power of the blood pool unless he had no other choice. Long Fu, is there any other way? No. He sighed in his heart. Since Long Fu had no other way, he was in big trouble. It would be a lie to say that he was not worried about being locked onto by a supreme Dao warrior at any time. Just like earlier, if he had not sensed the power of space in time, he would have been killed by Yang Yu. Long Fu, I would like to ask, how much of the remaining power of the blood pool is left in the mainland? Longao had encountered the remaining power of the blood pool in the Jojo mainland. Now that he had encountered the remaining power of the blood pool in the Clear Sky sect, it was as if the remaining power of the blood pool could be seen everywhere. I don't know, Master. I know what you mean. After thinking about it, Long Fu continued, back then, the god-killing sword and the blood pool were separated by force. The blood pool was a threat to the human world, so the dragon seal sealed the blood pool. The blood pool knew that it would be difficult to break out of the seal, so it scattered its remaining power everywhere so that it could reappear in the human world one day. So that was it. According to Long Fu, the blood pool had scattered its remaining power so that it could reappear in the human world in the future. If these so-called remnant forces were not eliminated, they would be a great danger to Xiao Chen and the dragon seal. This was because everyone knew that the blood pool was the most powerful overgod artifact in the world. Although he had not personally witnessed the might of the blood pool, Longao could imagine just how terrifying it was. If the blood pool really reappeared in the world, not to mention other people, where would his family be? Because of this, Longao kept telling himself that no matter what happened, he could not let the blood pool reappear in the world. Master, although old master chose you back then, the person who truly chose you was actually Long Yin. What does that mean? Longao was very curious. He didn't know what Long Fu meant. Back then, when he was still a trash in Scarlet Fire Town, he was bullied every day and even cleaned the Long family's ancestral hall. It was also at that time that he accidentally discovered the dragon seal and was chosen by it. In other words, he was chosen by the primordial divine dragon and Long Tien. Master, back then, the dragon seal chose the old master in hopes of borrowing the old master's strength to seal the blood pool. However, in the end, the two old masters showed off too much and offended the heavenly Tao. In the end, they were killed by the heavenly Tao. Sigh. Letting out a deep sigh, Longao naturally knew what Long Fu was talking about. Back then, the primordial divine dragon and Long Tien were indeed too reckless. If they could steadily develop their strength, it wouldn't take long for them to reach the peak of the martial way. If that was really the case, Long Tien and the primordial divine dragon could completely threaten the existence of the heavenly Tao. As for the final result, no one could say for sure. Although I don't know why Long Yin chose you, Master, I am certain that Long Yin must have its own reasons. As if he had guessed something. Longao asked, Long Fu, according to what you mean, can I understand it this way? Back then, when Long Yin chose Long Tien, it was not Long Yin's choice, but your choice? Nodding, Long Fu said, that's right. That's why Long Yin didn't acknowledge the two old masters in the end. Then what about me? For the time being, no. Longao wasn't the slightest bit surprised by this result. This was because he knew that if the dragon seal acknowledged his identity, then the current situation would not be like this. This was because Longao had always had a feeling that he and the dragon seal were not the ones controlling the dragon seal, but the dragon seal controlling him. Long Fu, what do you want me to do? Master, I don't know about the situation between you and Long Yin. Although I'm Long Yin's artifact spirit, there are some things that I can't decide. Regarding this point, Longao understood it very well. So, Master, whether you can fuse with Long Yin in the future and become its true master will all depend on your fortune and opportunity. I really can't do anything about it. Longao didn't say anything. After all, this matter sounded simple, but it was abnormally difficult to actually do it. However, it should be known that even Long Tien and the primordial divine dragon had not successfully fused with the dragon mark and become its old master. Although he had been recognized by the dragon mark, there was still a long way to go before he could truly control the dragon mark. Longao wouldn't choose to give up. No matter how many difficulties and dangers there were ahead, he would persevere. Long Fu, if God-slaying sword isn't used, can it be inserted into blood pool? Longao was looking forward to the power of blood pool. If God-slaying sword could absorb the power of blood pool and turn it into its own power, it would definitely be of great help to him in the future. If it was God-slaying sword in the past, Longao certainly wouldn't think so. But the situation now was completely different. After all, God-slaying sword had been forcefully sealed by him. Even if it was inserted into blood pool, he believed that it wouldn't fuse with blood pool. But Long Fu shook his head and said, Master, God-slaying sword mustn't be inserted into blood pool. Although we have sealed God-slaying sword, the power of blood pool is still there. If God-slaying sword fuses with blood pool again, the seal on God-slaying sword will automatically be broken. Long Fu's expression was a little serious as he continued, Master, I know what you mean. But I have already said, please don't worry. With God-slaying sword's power and its own Jianling, once the seal is broken, you will be able to control God-slaying sword. God-slaying sword itself had a Jianling. This was something that Longao naturally knew. When Long Yin destroyed blood pool, God-slaying sword's Jianling was destroyed as well. In other words, even if blood pool's weapon spirit could reappear in the world in the future, God-slaying sword would have no hope. Although God-slaying sword has sealed Bai Ling by force and isn't as powerful as the original Jianling, if God-slaying sword can refine Bai Ling in the future, its power should be similar. So Master, you don't have to worry. I see. But Longao wasn't excited at all. Instead, he sighed. Chapter 867. Master, what's wrong? Long Fu was very curious. To him, Master should be happy to be able to control the Godslayer sword. Long Fu, what do you think of Bai Ling? She's kind. Kind of. Bai Ling was kind to the extreme. Because of this, Longao couldn't bear to do it. Long Fu, tell me honestly. If the Godslayer sword refines Bai Ling, what will happen to Bai Ling? Seeing Master's serious expression, Long Fu didn't hide anything and said honestly, Bai Ling's spirituality will disappear. As expected. Longao had already guessed the result and his heart sank. If it was an ordinary Jianling, such as Xiling, he wouldn't be upset even if they were refined. But Bai Ling was such a kind Jianling that he couldn't bear to do it. Master, you can't bear to do it. Nodding, Longao said helplessly, is there any way to force Bai Ling to leave the Godslayer sword? Longao was depressed because he was prepared to let Bai Ling go, but the Godslayer sword sealed Bai Ling. Until now, Longao couldn't understand how the Godslayer sword could still seal Bai Ling when it was already sealed. How did the Godslayer sword do it? It's very difficult. Fortunately, we've already sealed the Godslayer sword. Otherwise, Bai Ling would have been refined. As if he could read Longao's mind, Long Fu continued, Master, if you don't want the Godslayer sword to refine Bai Ling, there's only one way. What way? Longao would rather give up the chance to upgrade his Godslayer sword than hurt Bai Ling. After thinking about it, Long Fu said, Master, it is almost impossible to let Bai Ling go now. You can only wait until you are strong enough to break the seal. Then, you can control the Godslayer sword and let Bai Ling go. Other than this, there is no other way. Since that was the case, it seemed like this was the only way. Longao didn't continue to dwell on this issue. He knew very well that the most important thing right now was to deal with Yang Yu. No matter what, Yang Yu was still a huge threat. How could he destroy Yang Yu? Longao sensed for a while, and after confirming that Yang Yu had really left, he left the Dragon Seal space. Young Master Long, that person's strength is enough to kill you instantly. Hearing the voice that suddenly came from the Godslayer sword, Longao smiled. How could he not know what Bai Ling said? Based on Yang Yu's previous strength, it was enough to kill him instantly. Now that Yang Yu had merged with the remaining power of the blood pool, he believed that her strength had risen to another level. Hey! She seemed to be a little curious. Longao knew very well that ever since Bai Ling finished speaking, she hadn't spoken again. Now that she suddenly spoke, could it be because of Yang Yu? He asked tentatively, Bai Ling, do you have a way? Longao knew very well that Bai Ling could definitely understand his words. If Bai Ling really had a way to stop Yang Yu from locking onto his position, then he would be temporarily out of danger. Although he had the Dragon Seal space, Longao wasn't worried about being killed by Yang Yu. But what if Yang Yu launched a sneak attack? Just like just now. Fortunately, his perception of space was very strong. Otherwise, he believed that he would have been killed by Yang Yu. After a moment of silence, Bai Ling suddenly said again, you can say that. But my injuries haven't completely recovered, so I can't help you completely solve the problem of locking onto your position. But in a short period of time, with my help, that person won't be able to continue locking onto your position. As expected. Longao sighed inwardly. What a kind girl. When he sealed her back then, not only did Bai Ling not bear a grudge, she even repaid his kindness with enmity. If he let the Godslayer sword refine such a kind person, wouldn't he be worse than a beast? Thank you. Longao naturally knew that Bai Ling was seriously injured. Longao knew very well that if it wasn't for Bai Ling's injuries, even if he had the Godslayer sword, he wouldn't be able to forcibly seal Bai Ling. According to Long Fu, whether it was Bai Ling or Xiling, They were both powerful existences that could devour the original body. Their strength was only slightly inferior to Tian Dao. If such a super existence wasn't seriously injured, not to mention sealing them, he was afraid that he would be killed in an instant. Speaking of Bai Ling, Longao suddenly thought of Xiling. Longao was very afraid of Xiling's strength. After all, Xiling wasn't injured like Bai Ling. If Xiling chased after him, then he would be dead. How troublesome. Longao shook his head helplessly. Not only was he being chased by Yang Yu, but he was also being chased by Xiling. There was also the danger of the Long family, the Clear Sky sect, and the Black Wind Valley. Longao realized that he had encountered so many troubles as soon as he stepped into the Qianwu continent. He helplessly thought that he was really like a tornado. No matter where he went, there would be a storm. Young Master Long, I can temporarily block that person's lock on you. But I can't do anything about my sister. F***ck Longao cursed in his heart. He really couldn't stand Bai Ling's kindness. She was too damn kind. Bai Ling was clearly being sealed by the Godslayer sword. She could be refined by the Godslayer sword at any time, or even disappear. But Bai Ling didn't seem to care. Instead, she was worried about his safety. Was there really such a person in this world? Thank you. Don't worry. No matter what happens, I won't let the Godslayer sword refine you. Bai Ling didn't reply. Instead, she said, Young Master Long, I just sensed your body. I found that there's a problem with your body. Ah, there's a problem with my body? Longao definitely wouldn't believe it if someone else said that to him. He would even think that the other party was crazy. But Bai Ling was different. He knew very well that with Bai Ling's kind personality, she wouldn't lie to him. Could there really be a problem with his body? That shouldn't be the case. If there was a problem with his body, Long Fu would have told him. Could it be that even Long Fu didn't know about his body's condition? Please tell me. Longao also wanted to know what was wrong with his body. Was it good or bad? Young Master Long, if I'm not wrong, you should have the unique Desolate Saint physique. That's right. Longao was more or less surprised that Bai Ling could sense that he had the Desolate Saint physique. But with Bai Ling's strength, it wasn't difficult for her to sense it. But there's something wrong with young Master Long's Desolate Saint physique. It seems to have been sealed by someone. Otherwise, with your Desolate Saint physique, your cultivation speed shouldn't be this fast. Young Master Long, I want to ask, who sealed your Desolate Saint physique? This was a big deal. Even Longao himself didn't know who sealed his Desolate Saint physique. Chapter 868. How could he answer if he knew nothing? Longao really didn't know about his own body's condition. He was a little anxious, because Longao knew very well that Bai Ling would never lie to him. Could it be that his body was really sealed by someone? It was a little unbelievable. Bai Ling, what's going on? Bai Ling was silent for a moment, then said, Young Master Long, the power that sealed your Desolate Saint body is too strong. Not to mention me, even if sister came personally, she wouldn't be able to resist. He exclaimed. Longao knew the strength of Bai Ling and Xiling very well. The two Jianling had devoured his true body. According to Long Fu, in the Qianwu continent, unless the Heavenly Dao personally came, no one was a match for the two Jianling, including Long Fu. At this time, Longao's heart became even heavier, because he still couldn't remember who sealed his Desolate Saint body. Could it be the divine mathematician? Or Long Fu? After thinking about it, Longao could only think of two people, because among all the people he knew, whether it was an enemy or a friend, it seemed that only the divine mathematician and Long Fu could seal him without anyone knowing. Long Fu shouldn't be able to do it, so the divine mathematician's chances were the highest. Bai Ling, are you really unable to help me break the seal? Young Master Long, if I can help you break the seal, I will definitely not refuse, but the seal in your body is too strong. Longao didn't have the slightest doubt. After all, Bai Ling was so kind. Without continuing to ask Bai Ling, Longao directly entered the dragon seal space. Going straight to the point, Longao directly asked, Long Fu, I believe you should have heard Bai Ling's words just now. I really want to know if you know that the desolate saint body in my body is sealed. In fact, Longao already had an answer in his heart, because he knew that with Long Fu's strength, it was impossible for him not to know that his body was sealed. Sure enough. Long Fu nodded and said, what Bai Ling said just now was true. Then why didn't you tell me? Longao was very curious. Since Long Fu knew about his matter, why didn't tell him? With Long Fu's character, it seemed a bit strange. Master, I didn't tell you about this because I didn't want you to feel burdened. Longao didn't say anything, because he always believed in one thing, and that was that Long Fu wouldn't harm him. Since that was the case, Long Fu didn't choose to tell him, he should have his own thoughts. Master, your desolate saint body is indeed sealed by a very mysterious but very powerful force. Just as Bai Ling said, this force is too powerful. Whether it's them or me, I believe that even if the heavenly Tao is here, we won't be able to break the seal in your body. *CK Longao cursed in his heart. He never thought that things would be so troublesome. Long Fu, is this power that's sealing me coming from Master God Diviner? If even the heavenly Tao couldn't break this power, then there was no doubt that the person who sealed his body wasn't the heavenly Tao. Since it wasn't the heavenly Tao, then who could it be? After thinking about it, Longao could only think of one person, and that was the divine mathematician. It had to be known that in the Tianwu continent, there were two people who had stepped onto the peak of the martial path. One was the heavenly Tao, and the other was the divine mathematician. If it wasn't the heavenly Tao, then it had to be the divine mathematician. Furthermore, he had entered the Crystal Palace twice. With the divine mathematician's strength, sealing his desolate saint body was simply something that could be done in a matter of minutes. No, Master, I know what you want to say, but I can tell you clearly that the sealing power in your body isn't the work of the divine mathematician. If my guess isn't wrong, the sealing power in your body should be related to your Long family. Long family? Could it be Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon? Before Longao could ask, Long Fu continued, Master, now is not the time for you to deal with this matter. After all, with your strength, you won't be able to break the seal. Even if Bai Ling and I join forces, we won't be able to. So, your top priority now is to increase your strength as soon as possible. Longao was very clear that Long Fu was definitely hiding something from him. However, Long Fu was obviously unwilling to say more. Even if he continued to ask, it would be useless. After knowing about his own matter, Longao was very depressed. Who on earth sealed his desolate saint body? Long family. It seemed that if he wanted to solve this mystery, there was only one way, and that was to go to the Long family. He didn't continue to dwell on the matter of the seal. Just as Long Fu had said, with his current strength, he wasn't qualified to know about this matter, let alone solve it. In any case, the desolate saint body was sealed, and it wouldn't cause any harm to him. Hindering the speed of cultivation, Longao was still able to tolerate this point. Although he didn't want to continue to dwell on this matter, Longao still couldn't forget about it. After all, it was a little strange that his body had been sealed for no reason. Longao was very clear that it was almost impossible to get an answer from Long Fu. The only way was to ask Bai Ling. At the peak of the mountain, Longao sat quietly alone at the peak of the mountain. In his mind, he kept thinking about the matter of his seal. No matter how he thought about it, he still couldn't figure out who had sealed his desolate saint body. Young Master Long, I can sense the dragon's breath on your body. Are you a dragon warrior? Longao wasn't surprised that Bai Ling knew that he was a dragon warrior. This was because Bai Ling's strength was too strong. It was just that her injuries hadn't recovered yet. That's right, I'm a dragon warrior. Since the other party already knew his identity, Longao didn't continue to hide it. Bai Ling, do you have a way to help me break the seal in my body? In the end, Longao still chose to ask Bai Ling for help. Although he didn't know why Long Fu didn't help him, Longao still couldn't pretend that this didn't happen. He didn't know why, but he felt that he seemed to have fallen into a huge conspiracy. In other words, he was just a chess piece. As for who was the chess master, it was unknown. Young Master Long, if you can break the void, then there will be a way to break the seal. Otherwise, you will have to find a stronger existence to break the seal. Break the void. Longao didn't quite understand what Bai Ling was saying. As for what Bai Ling had just said, it wasn't that Longao hadn't thought of finding a higher level warrior. However, according to Long Fu, the seal in his body couldn't be broken even by the heavenly Tao. If that was the case, whether the godly mathematician could break the seal or not was another matter. Even the #1 expert of the Tianwu continent wasn't sure if he could break the seal. Longao found it hard to imagine who on this continent could help him. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.